Clary Fray thought her biggest challenge at 18 would be acing her art school interview. Poor thing. Little did she know that getting rejected for sketching mystical creatures would be the least of her problems that day, because right after that, she bumps into a mysterious blonde guy with a knowing look, like he's in on secrets no one else knows. And the weirdest part, he seems shocked that she can actually see him. Meanwhile, in the adult world where dark secrets hide behind every corner, Detective Luke, basically Clary's honorary uncle, is busy investigating bodies drained of blood. Back to Clary, she gets a gift from Dot, her mom's mystical crystal-loving friend. It's a steely, the same symbol she keeps doodling during her daydreams. And her mom? Jocelyn suddenly decides it's time to spill the truth, Dumbledore style. But Clary's more interested in hitting up a club with Simon, her best friend and proud king of the friend zone. And yes, his bandmate Maureen is totally into him, though of course Simon has no clue. At the Pandemonium nightclub, Clary spots the mysterious blonde again, this time flanked by the gothic version of the Three Musketeers, hunting down a shape-shifting demon. And what does Clary do? She jumps right into the chaos, takes a blade to the stomach, and runs off. Classic. Back home, everything falls apart. Jocelyn finally tries to tell Clary the truth, but it's too late. The circle storms the apartment. Dot is captured. Jocelyn drinks a magic potion that makes her pass out, and Clary is thrown into a portal while the entire room goes up in flames. Not exactly the birthday she had in mind, and like any good teen drama involving demons, things only get worse from there. Clary runs to the police, only to hear Luke brush her off like he doesn't care. She returns to her home, gets attacked by a fake Dot, and is saved by Jace. Yep, that blonde heartthrob again. Not before getting poisoned and carried off to what looks like a sword-wielding version of Hogwarts. Clary wakes up at the Institute, a church-turned-demon hunter HQ, where Jace reveals that she might not be just an ordinary human after all. Simon naturally comes looking for her, only to find his BFF knee-deep in a world of supernatural warriors. And to top it all off, a member of the Circle shows up, because of course they do. With pressure closing in from all sides, Clary is left with one option, to face the truth, that being Jocelyn's daughter might mean far more than she ever imagined. Jace drags Simon to the Institute, and the poor mundane feels like he's stumbled into a live-action RPG. Alec and Isabelle, Jace's adoptive siblings, don't trust this mysterious redhead one bit, and Simon? Well, he's just trying to make it out alive. Jace takes Clary to meet Hodge, the librarian who looks like he walked straight out of a Tolkien novel, who drops a major bomb. Valentine, the Voldemort of this universe, is alive and after the mortal cup. Bonus twist: Jocelyn used to be part of the Circle. Yep, Clary's mom wasn't nearly as normal as she seemed. Clary, who can't even remember what she had for breakfast, realizes her memories were wiped by magic. She's convinced Dot is behind it and goes looking for her. Too late. Dot has been captured and tortured by Valentine, refusing to give up any information, which leads to her death. Out of options, Jace suggests the most reasonable plan he can think of, taking Clary to the Silent Brothers to forcibly recover her memories. The idea is so horrifying that even Alec protests, but Clary goes anyway. In the City of Bones, the eerie monk-like brothers give Clary a mental strip-down using the Soul Sword. And what does she find out? Valentine is her father. Cue the Greek tragedy. When they return to the surface, they discover Simon has been kidnapped by vampires. Because of course, just when you think things can't get any worse, a bloodthirsty clan shows up to stir the pot. The search for Simon becomes the top priority. Alec wants to follow the Claves rulebook. Clary wants to follow her heart. Jace ignores both and decides to improvise. Isabelle tags along, because let's be honest, she's always the one who gets things done. Simon is being held captive by Raphael, the vampire diplomat, and Camille, the goth queen. They want Clary because she literally holds the key to the mortal cup. As the Shadowhunters gear up, Jace and Alec have a heart-to-heart, more like a we hate each other but also love each other kind of brotherly drama. Izzy seduces the Seelie Meliorn to score a secret route. Jace and Clary grab a flying demon bike. Yes, that's a thing. From a bar crawling with demons. With the plan in motion, the team storms Hotel D'Amour. Alec and Izzy keep the vamps busy while Clary draws her first rune and stakes a bloodsucker. First kill, check. They find Simon, but then Raphael shows up again. Surprisingly, he helps them escape. Turns out, the vampires got some sense after all. Simon's safe, but the mood is tense. Clary tries to comfort him. They share a moment that would make any teen drama writer proud. Jace sees it, Alec sees it, and he's not happy. Speaking of Alec, he's done living in Jace's shadow. With the Parabatai bond stretched to its limit, it's starting to look like their brotherhood is hanging by a thread, and this might just be the beginning of the chaos. Clary wakes up, drenched in sweat, still trapped in the echo of a nightmare where Magnus Bane rips her memories away under her mother's indifferent gaze. Magnus. Beside her, Simon, paler than usual, recognizes the name. He heard Camille spit it out like venom. It doesn't take long for Clary to rush to Jace, with the urgency of someone who just tugged on a thread straight from hell. Jace, ever helpful and ridiculously handsome, confirms it. Magnus is the High Warlock of Brooklyn. With Hodge's help, they hatch a near-cinematic plan. Lure Magnus using a ruby necklace that was once a love gift from Camille, of course. While the gang sets up a Downworlder party to make the trade, Simon decides he's had enough. Leaving the Institute is the only way to protect his family. Clary begs him to stay, but he's already halfway out the door. As they prep for the event, Izzy gives Clary a glam makeover while Jace hands her a seraph blade. The party takes place in a setting worthy of a supernatural rave. Magnus shows up, takes the jewel, and instead of holding up his end of the bargain, drops a bombshell. He no longer has the memories. He passed them on to a memory demon to protect them from Valentine. As if that weren't enough, he also reveals that Dot is dead, but there's no time for grief. A circle assassin crashes the scene, chaos erupts, and Magnus vanishes again. Clary freaks out. Alec, visibly losing patience and composure, snaps and accuses her of running them in circles. Jace and Alec resort to parabatai tracking and bingo, they locate Magnus's new hideout. When they arrive, they find Valentine's followers got there first. A full-blown brawl breaks out. Magic, blades, fists, and a dash of desperation. In the end, the Shadowhunters and Magnus manage to hold their ground and even rescue a young warlock caught in the crossfire. As thanks, Magnus agrees to summon Valak, the memory demon. But there's a price. Each person must give up their most treasured memory of the one they love most. Alec, overwhelmed by exposing his feelings for Jace, panics and breaks the circle, allowing Valak to capture Jace. Clary, because of course it's Clary, breaks every rule, kills the demon, saves her crush, but loses the very memories she was fighting to recover. Jace is alive, Clary is shattered, and as if that weren't enough, Valentine calls her with an offer, the mortal cup in exchange for her mother's life. With her brain still reeling after coming into contact with Valentine, Clary finds herself surrounded by tension on all sides. Alec confiscates the portal shard, trying to keep her from walking into a trap, but that move only pours gasoline on an already blazing fire between him and Jace, who sees the shard as their only real shot at finding the enemy. Before they can properly throw punches, Maurice and Robert Lightwood storm into the Institute like a pair of hurricanes. Maurice, exuding military school principal energy, comes down hard on her kids' improvised missions and takes command. And she's not alone. She brings bad news. The Seeleys have cut off communication with the Clave. The result? Jace and Isabelle are sent to investigate, while Alec is grounded with Clary duty, a punishment disguised as a mission. Meanwhile, Luke discovers that Valentine is killing mundanes with the sight in his shady experiments. Back at the Institute, Jace tries to talk to Alec about the summoning of Valak. No emotional heart-to-hearts, just a direct request: protect Clary. Alec nods, but the inner conflict is written all over his face. Clary, never one to play by the rules, convinces Alec to go with her to her old family apartment, hoping to find some clues. Simon, always in desperate buddy mode, intercepts the call and joins them. They discover a box with her father's initials, but before they can even process the find, they're captured by werewolves and taken to the den. Clary is threatened, and Simon nearly becomes lunch. She lies about the cup's location, claiming it's still at the apartment. In a flash of brilliance, Simon starts a fire and alerts the Shadowhunters. Jace, Alec, and Luke burst in, all guns blazing. Amid the chaos, the Pax Alpha tries to kill Clary, but Luke challenges him for leadership and wins, becoming the new Alpha. The price? He leaves the fight badly wounded, and because no one here knows what rest means, Jace decides to ignore all higher orders. He, Clary, and Simon load Luke into a car and speed toward Magnus Bane's apartment with the kind of urgency only those who live between heaven and hell truly understand. At Magnus's apartment, chaos reigns with a touch of desperation. Luke is in critical condition. The Alpha's venom is tearing him apart from the inside. Magnus reveals he can save him, but he'll need a few essentials, some rare ingredients, and, of course, Alec's life energy. Jace and Simon head out on the mission, but not before getting into a classic jealous jock versus frantic nerd showdown. Simon, by the way, shows off some serious superhuman strength, which freaks him out even more than usual. Meanwhile, back at the Institute, Maurice and Robert are busy emotionally wrecking their kids. In the name of restoring the family's honor, they decide to marry Alec off to some random girl, without even asking if he's on board. Spoiler, he's not. As everyone waits for the antidote, Clary Clary finally hears the full story of the family drama. Between pained groans, Luke recounts how Valentine was once a charismatic leader who turned genocidal extremist. He also reveals that he and Jocelyn fell in love, which was more than enough to tip the blonde psychopath over the edge. And to top it all off, it was Valentine himself who betrayed Luke and got him turned into a werewolf. Parabatai of the year, right? Alec arrives and, using his energy, helps Magnus finish the antidote. Luke survives, and the chemistry between Alec and Magnus definitely heating up, just the way we like it. After the relief, Clary confronts Luke about a box marked with the initials JC, and then comes the gut punch. She had a brother, Jonathan Christopher, killed in a fire set by Valentine. That revelation unlocks something inside her, a dormant power, an angelic ability that lets her see a rune her mother hid on a piece of wood. And there, in that near mystical moment, everything clicks into place. So, Clary finally discovers where the long-coveted mortal cup is hidden, tucked inside a tarot card painted by her mother. That very card sits inconspicuously on Luke's desk at the precinct, just another knickknack among staplers and cold coffee. The plan was simple: get in, grab the card, get out. The kind of plan that only works when a screenwriter isn't involved. Before the Shadowhunters can even sketch out a rescue plan for the card, Luke gets arrested by internal affairs and dragged out like a character in a telenovela. His belongings, including the tarot cards, go straight to the evidence locker. You know that place where objects go in and never come out? Yeah, that one. With no other options, Jace and Clary decide to infiltrate the precinct. The strategy? Stage a dramatic breakup scene in the lobby, like two teenagers mid-crisis. A performance worthy of an Oscar. Clary uses the chaos to learn the locker is sealed off and completely inaccessible. Even to them, nothing like a suicide mission in the middle of the afternoon. Outside, the team scrambles in desperation to come up with a new plan when Simon calls in a panic, convinced he's dying. Clary, juggling a million things and unaware of the severity, brushes him off. The new move? Trigger a blackout in the building. Alec spills water as a distraction, while Isabelle, ever stealthy, fries the electrical grid. The result? Total darkness. In the chaos, Jace and Clary climb through the elevator shaft to the locker and, after some pro-level parkour effort, retrieve the cards and escape. With the cup card in hand, Clary quickly realizes it's not as simple as holding it and shouting, "Shazam!" The artifact doesn't just pop out. And of course, because nothing can ever be simple, Isabelle's necklace starts pulsing like an emergency beacon. Demons incoming, angry and bloodthirsty. The only solution? Split up. Jace yells at Clary to run and not look back while he and Isabelle hold the line. Elsewhere in the script, Simon faces off with his mother and sister, who think he's on hard drugs. Lost in his own body, he runs straight to the Hotel d'Amour. There, he meets Camille and asks the one question he's been dreading. Is he turning into a vampire? Meanwhile, Clary races through dark tunnels and is stopped by a wounded Jace begging for the cup. The problem? Small details give the imposter away. With newly discovered courage, she strikes and kills the creature, a shape-shifting demon. Alec arrives alongside Luke, who has just been freed. Both of them, surprised, acknowledge the girl's bravery. Back at the Institute, Clary hands over the card with the cup, and at Hotel d'Amour, Camille, with the most devilish smile of the night shift, reveals to Simon that vampire blood only fades if he survived the night before. Then, with venomous charm, she leans in. Now, with the cup in their possession, the big debate begins. Do they hand it over to the Clave, or use it as leverage to rescue Jocelyn? Clary doesn't want to give up the one chance to save her mother, and Jace, shockingly, agrees with her. Before they can decide the fate of humanity, the Institute alarm goes off. And who breaks in? Not Valentine, not the Circle, it's Simon. The boy collapses in their arms, transformed, exhausted, and undead. Raphael, always appearing like he just walked out of a very ominous board meeting, carries Simon's body and presents Clary with a classic gothic dilemma. Bury him and let him rise as a vampire, or drive a stake through his heart and ensure a final death. To make it even more theatrical, she has until sunset, because drama is this show's middle name. As Clary spirals, Valentine discovers that his daughter has the cup, and that Luke is now leading the New York werewolf pack. Alec and Isabelle get a visit from their parents, the kind of family gathering where nothing good ever happens. The Clave is sending an auditor, Lydia Branwell, to restore order to the chaos. She arrives like she just bought the entire building and starts pulling strings. And amid all this, a zombie attacks. But not just any rune-covered zombie, This one is smarter and deadlier than the rest. It strikes at the Jade Wolf restaurant, and the team heads over. The creature is taken in for autopsy, and Magnus Bane, our favorite eccentric warlock, is called in. Lydia, who lost her fiancé and now lives only for her work, begins to show some depth. Meanwhile, Clary hears a painful confession from Luke. It was his love for Jocelyn that kept him from losing himself as a werewolf. A heartfelt truth, and one that adds even more weight to Clary's burden. At the same time, Camille arrives at the vampire lair to reclaim Simon, and Raphael seizes the moment to betray his maker. In a reality show-worthy showdown, Camille is publicly accused of breaking the accords, and Raphael takes command. Alec, under pressure from all sides, makes an unthinkable move. He proposes to Lydia. A political marriage, of course, nothing like tradition to protect the family name. And as the sun sets, Clary makes her choice. She buries Simon. He rises from the earth, reborn, and hungry. He tries to attack Clary, but Jace steps in. Horrified by what he's become, Simon sees himself as a monster. Raphael offers to train him, to help him adjust. Clary, devastated, is left to deal with the weight of her decision. Even with all the chaos, there's no time to breathe. Izzy brings urgent news. A Forsaken has broken into the Institute, injuring Hodge and Alec. The situation demands Jace's presence, so he rushes off, leaving Clary in charge of finding Simon, with Luke riding shotgun. Back at the Institute, Lydia, now in full command, decides to interrogate Meliorn, the Seelie who looks like he knows way too much. Isabelle flares up. GPS tracking bracelets for Downworlders were never part of her plan. Meliorn is imprisoned. Diplomacy goes up in smoke. Meanwhile, Jace takes another emotional gut punch. He learns that the Lightwoods, his adoptive parents, were part of the circle, but that's nothing compared to what comes next. Alec, stone-faced as always, announces his engagement to Lydia. A political marriage, sure, but still a blow. Across town, Clary finds Simon at home. He tries to play it cool, until his mother walks in. Clary covers with a quick excuse and gets Simon out before he does something he'll regret, like biting a family member. Their conversation is another emotional hit. Simon is shattered. Clary owns the blame. He forgives her, but forgiveness doesn't fill the existential hole he's been digging inside his chest. Meanwhile, the plan to free Meliorn gains momentum, and it needs a bit of magical help. Enter Magnus Bane, full of charm, spells, and a stolen steely courtesy of Alec, but magic alone won't cut it. Clary and Simon head to Hotel Dumore and propose the unthinkable, an alliance between Shadowhunters, werewolves, and vampires. The new generation wants equality. Raphael agrees. So does Simon. The revolution is officially on. The group ambushes the convoy transporting Meliorn, only to discover Alec is leading the mission. The Parabatai reunion turns into a clash of convictions. Jace tries to reach Alec, insisting this is about him, about feelings that can't be bound by runes. Alec won't budge, but the standoff gives Clary just enough time to escape with Meliorn, and just when things begin to settle, Meliorn, grateful, offers a gift. He can help Clary find Valentine. Surprise! Clary thought that necklace was just an exotic accessory, something between mystical and sentimental, but Meliorn, of course, with that I know way too much attitude, decides to drop a bomb. The jewel is actually a fragment of an interdimensional portal, and not just any portal. This one leads to a parallel reality where Shadowhunters won the war against demons centuries ago, and like all great victors, vanished into legend. The package comes with the usual disclaimer. Entering that universe means inhabiting the body of her alternate self, and risking becoming a permanent souvenir of the multiverse. The only anchor to hold on to her sanity, focusing on everything that's different, and on someone who reminds her of who she really is. Guess who volunteers to be that emotional anchor? Exactly, Jace. Because their connection had to be some kind of cosmic fluke anyway. Meanwhile, Raphael decides it's time for Simon to get some crash course coaching with Luke. How not to bite people in public 101. But the Alpha Wolf has his own problems. An internal investigation he handles with a bit of charm and the right connections. At the Institute, chaos spreads like mold in a greenhouse. The bold move to rescue Meliorn doesn't go unpunished, and Lydia Branwell, walking embodiment of the clave, comes in swinging her authority. Isabelle is arrested for high treason. Alec, who had been trying to play it cool, finally breaks and makes a bold move. He offers the Mortal Cup in exchange for his sister's freedom. Clary, never one to listen to reason, accepts the challenge and steps through the portal. She wakes up in a utopia where the sky is always blue, war is just a museum exhibit, and her mother is still alive. Valentine, in this world, is a charming CEO with a corner office and the vibe of someone who's never raised his voice in his life. Clary's friends? Strangers with familiar faces who treat her like she doesn't exist. And Jace? He's her boyfriend. In any normal universe, that would be soap opera material. But here, it's just one more step toward emotional amnesia. Magnus, of course, had to be part of the mess. His alternate self is a washed-up seer with no magic, hawking life advice in late-night infomercials. But he's the only only lead. Clary finds him, and with a bit of teamwork, they reactivate his powers. The mission now is simple: find the way back. But on the other side, Meliorn makes a grim discovery. A demon slipped through the dimensional crack and is now wreaking havoc. Jace, in a wildly reckless move, demands to enter the portal to save Clary. Alec, sensing something's off, teams up with Hodge to track him down. The process is brutal, nearly severing their bond. In the parallel world, Clary and Magnus discover the portal is hidden inside Valentine's company. At the corporate party, the creature makes its entrance, and chaos erupts. Jace arrives just in time for the fight, but ends up wounded and poisoned. They rush back through the portal, Clary and Magnus dragging a barely alive Jace, just as it seals behind them forever. But the place they return to is not what they expected. From the shadows, a familiar face emerges, and Jace can hardly believe his eyes. Michael Wayland, his father, alive. Meanwhile, back at the Institute, Isabelle is already rehearsing her defeat speech, but Alec isn't ready to give up just yet. His new mission? Buy time. He asks Lydia to delay the trial, just long enough to find Jace, and of course, the Mortal Cup. Desperate, Clary takes Jace and the man claiming to be her father to Luke's hideout. The situation is grim. The poison is spreading fast, and the only cure is vampire blood. Poor Simon doesn't know it yet, but he's about to make a donation. They head to the Hotel du Mort, where Raphael does what clan leaders do best: refuse help, citing the Accords and a severe lack of empathy. But Simon puts on his politician hat and blackmails Raphael, using some juicy intel about Camille. The result? He gets the blood and a new title, Clan Advisor, all while still adjusting to the fact that he now craves blood more than burgers. Back at the Institute, the Inquisitor arrives, spreading fear and summary judgments. In a panic, Alec runs to Magnus and all but begs for help. The request? Defend Isabelle. Magnus, ever the reluctant and fabulous lawyer, agrees, but demands a personal price: Alec's bow and quiver, because with glamour, there's always a little pain. Jace recovers, thanks to the Simon-Raphael team-up. Then Michael drops another bomb. Valentine injected him with Downworlder blood, giving him abilities beyond those of a typical Shadowhunter, perfect for spying, and perfect for manipulation. He even suggests that Jace's attachment to Clary is a weakness. Wounded but resolute, Jace decides to lead the mission to rescue Jocelyn. Naturally, because after nearly dying from interdimensional poisoning, storming the enemy's cursed hospital sounds like the ideal recovery plan. At the trial, Magnus comes out swinging with razor-sharp rhetoric, and Isabelle turns the tide with a soul-stirring speech. Touched, Lydia drops the charges, but the Inquisitor, bitter as break room coffee, sets a deadline: 24 hours to retrieve the cup, or Isabelle will be condemned. Renwick is a trap. Luke fights a Forsaken. Jace and Clary face off against demons, and there lies Jocelyn, unconscious, motionless, enchanted. But the real blow comes right after. Michael, who seemed like just a long-lost father, reveals his true identity: Valentine in disguise. Yes, the king of dramatic reveals strikes again, and with a single verbal strike, he destroys their world. Clary and Jace are siblings. Everything crashes down in a nanosecond. Before they can piece together their shattered thoughts, Valentine opens a portal and drags Jace with him. Back at the Institute, Clary hands over the cup, saving Izzy, but the tension between the Parabatai snaps. Alec confronts Jace over his lies, and the bond nearly destroyed between them. Their friendship, hanging by a thread, finally breaks. Meanwhile, Magnus returns Alec's bow with a reminder: he doesn't have to marry out of duty. Across the city, Luke delivers one last gut punch to Simon. Clary and Jace are brother and sister, and with that revelation, a whole new perspective begins to form in Simon's mind. On another day, Clary and Jace are off on yet another mission: to find a cure for Jocelyn's enchanted slumber. The lead? Ragnar Fell, a reclusive warlock who just might hold the answer. Magnus, of course, volunteers to lead the hunt for the enchanted hermit. And Alec, well, Alec keeps pretending he's really going to get married. At Ragnar's mystical estate, each of the three, Clary, Jace, and Magnus, faces their own demons until they finally find the warlock. He confirms it. The potion was made using a spell hidden in the Book of the White. Too bad the book is no longer in his possession, and before he can reveal its whereabouts, a Shax demon storms the sanctuary. Ragnar is mortally wounded and dies in Magnus's arms. Back in New York, suspicion of betrayal falls on Lydia. Jace, impulsive as always, wants to go in guns blazing, but Isabelle and Clary hold him back, Clary choosing diplomacy instead. Lydia, cold and composed, makes it clear her engagement to Alec was a contract, not a romance. Jace and Alec finally lay it all on the table. The fears, the resentment, the repressed feelings. And like every good war brother drama, they forgive each other, rekindling a bond that had nearly broken. Ragnar's spirit appears to Magnus because no one ever gets to rest in this series, and urges him to fight for love. On the wedding day, with everyone gathered and the clave watching closely, Magnus shows up. Alec, standing at the altar with Lydia, hesitates. She understands everything with just a look. He turns, crosses the hall, and kisses Magnus in front of everyone. Clary, inspired by memories from the alternate dimension, recognizes a bookmark she saw there. The clue leads to Camille Belcourt. Of course it's her. And while Magnus mourns not finding the book, Clary is already a step ahead. Later, she shows Jace a box of baby keepsakes, including a medallion with the initials JC touched. Jace begins to believe that his mother never forgot him, but Valentine's shadow still looms, along with the fear that darkness may run in his blood. At the infirmary, where apparently no one is safe, Hodge pulls out his ring and contacts Valentine. Yes, the traitor was under their roof the whole time, and so begins the plan to bring Jocelyn back into action, centered around a mystical item with the name of an expensive cosmetic, the Book of the White. Jace and Clary are on this treasure hunt, and all they have to go on is a page marker. Yes, really, an old scrap of paper that leads them straight into the unwelcoming arms of Camille Belcourt. Meanwhile, Alec is dealing with the fallout of ditching his wedding at the altar for love. Cue a fiery heart-to-heart with his mom. But things smooth out. He and Magnus agree to take things slow. Back at the Institute, calm turns to chaos. Lydia shows up on the brink of death and... plot twist, the mortal cup has vanished. The blame lands squarely on Hodge, that backstabbing tutor who was supposed to be teaching ethics. Security footage confirms it. He pulled a full-on telenovela villain move, accepted a ring from Valentine in exchange for freedom, and bolted with the most important artifact in Shadowhunter history. Valentine, being the textbook narcissistic villain, rewards Hodge with what we call poisoned freedom, and, as a bonus, kicks off his evil army project, using the cup like a 3D printer for mutant Shadowhunters. Jace, burning for revenge, decides to hunt Hodge down solo, but Clary yanks him back by the collar and reminds him, "Hey, we've got a mom in a coma to wake up." They track Hodge down, and in a conveniently shady alley, because bad things always happen in alleys, Jace and Alec corner the traitor. Jace is ready to dish out justice himself when Valentine shows up all dramatic, revealing that the plan was always to get Jace. Classic. Across town, Clary and Simon go knocking on the vampire's door for help, but Raphael slams it in their face. Isabelle, queen of the quick fix, stages a distraction while Clary and Simon bust Camille out. Of course, she only agrees to help if Simon signs a document forgiving her for turning him into a vampire. Magnus drafts the contract, reluctantly, in exchange for the Book of the White. In Camille's lavish penthouse, Simon signs, and surprise. The book is hidden inside one of Jocelyn's old recipe journals, a mother's touch, with magic naturally. But the joy is short-lived. Valentine shows up right on Sinister's schedule and pulls Jace's emotional strings like a master puppeteer. Torn between his father's blood and his true friends, Jace gives in, and there he goes, stepping into the portal with Valentine, while the rest of the team is left behind with matching "we just lost the protagonist" expressions. But not all is lost. With the Book of the White in hand, Magnus casts the spell, and Jocelyn finally wakes up. Jocelyn confirms everyone's worst fear. Jace is Jonathan, the very same son she thought was dead. And Valentine, that lunatic laced the baby's blood with demon ichor like he was seasoning a roast. The result? A Shadowhunter, with superhuman strength and zero emotional compass. But peace at the Institute lasts about as long as a Black Friday deal. Victor Aldertree storms in with all the charm of an uninvited boss, activates full lockdown mode, and starts interrogating everyone like it's Big Brother Clave Edition. The verdict? Jace is a traitor, and the manhunt is on. Dead or alive, Clary, Izzy, and Alec aren't having it. Justice and the Clave have never been close friends. Izzy gives Clary a crash course in camera evasion worthy of the CIA, and Clary sneaks out to get help from Luke. Alec, meanwhile, makes peace with Magnus, complete with apologies and a parabatai tracking spell. They find Jace in an abandoned pizza place. There, Valentine puts on a little show. He makes Jace face off against Maria, the vampire leader, claiming she's too dangerous to live, a loyalty test. And Jace, broken and vulnerable, passes with flying colors and brutal force. He executes her, leaving everyone, especially Alec, wondering, who even is this guy? Once again, Jocelyn decides it's time to spill everything. She reveals that Jace was raised with demon blood, and, according to a renowned warlock, he's destined to bring nothing but destruction. Nothing like a good old family apocalypse prophecy to kick off the day. Meanwhile, Aldertree is still in full-on drill sergeant mode, pressuring Simon. Either he spies on Raphael's clan, or loses his right to see Clary, Simon gives it a shot, but the mission quickly turns into a trap, and he ends up begging Magnus for help. Back at the Institute, Alec snaps. He blames Clary for everything, from the problems crashing down on them, to Jace's disappearance, to the end of the world, maybe even the bad coffee. He kicks her out without hesitation, proving that grief and anger are a volatile mix. On Valentine's ship, Jace remains defiant, refusing to join the dark side. So Valentine ups the ante. He kidnaps Clary. How? With the help of Dot, the zombie witch with an identity crisis. Clary wakes up under a spell, convinced Jace is the chosen one, and the Downworlders are hell incarnate. Meanwhile, Simon and Magnus head to India in search of Camille. Yep, the vampires on a global run. They face snakes, self-doubt, and a generous dose of sarcasm. Along the way, they recover a precious box that could be just the bait they need to lure her out. Back on the ship, Clary, finally free from the spell, finds Jace on the verge of killing a werewolf. She steps in just in time, right as Alec, Izzy, and the others break through the magical barriers. Chaos erupts. Clary and Jace barely manage to escape, but Alec, drained from the Adamus ritual, collapses into his sister's arms. And so, amid spells, mind games, and near apocalypses, the group finds itself more divided and more determined than ever. Valentine slips away, but the war is just heating up. At the Institute, chaos erupts. Alec, the ever-composed warrior, is in a coma, completely out cold, after his parabatai bond with Jace is violently severed. The only hope? Magnus, the city's most stylish warlock, reveals there's only one way to save him. Jace must restore the piece of Alec's soul that was lost. Easy, right? Meanwhile, Clary shows up at the Institute, determined to protect Jace. To do so, she lies straight to Victor Aldertree's face, claiming she was kidnapped by the warlock Dot and lost her memories. But with Izzy, she's honest. She and Jace jumped off Valentine's ship, but the current pulled them apart. Jace, on the other hand, is battered and broken in some random bar when Maya, a waitress, steps in to help. He musters the strength to call Izzy, who begs him to go to Magnus. But of course, nothing's ever that simple. Luke's pack finds Gretel's body, and guess who all the evidence points to? Jace. Let the witch hunt, or should we say spider hunt, begin, revenge included. Meanwhile, Simon's off on his own side quest. He heads home and finds none other than Raphael there with his mom. Blackmail? Absolutely. Raphael demands Simon find Camille, or say goodbye to his mom's safety. Back at the Institute, Izzy tries to take Alec to Magnus, but Aldertree forbids it. Bureaucracy over family, as always. On his way to Magnus, Jace is attacked by werewolves. Cue the telenovela moment. Jocelyn shows up in full mom mode, but Jace shuts her down with a classic teen rebel move. Let me live my life. Desperate, Izzy cuts a deal with Aldertree. Jace's location in exchange for a portal. If it means protecting him, she'll go all in. Everything comes to a head, literally, in an alley. Jace's moments from being torn apart by the wolves, Maya leading the charge, and Luke desperately trying to keep order. The tensions at season finale levels when Izzy bursts through the portal, whip in hand, cutting through like a Shadowhunter Wonder Woman. Jace finally reaches Alec, who's barely hanging on. He takes Alec's hand, recites the Parabatai oath, and just like that, the magic flows. Alec wakes up, just in time to see the Clave burst in and arrest Jace for high treason. In the City of Bones, Clary faces a jailed Jace. He shuts her out with a coldness that could freeze the soul sword itself. He calls himself Valentine's weapon and insists that to protect Clary, she must stay out of his life. The pain in his eyes betrays the truth, but Clary, now hardened, swallows the blow and walks away. Alec, still recovering, gets the day's pearl of wisdom from Aldertree. He's going to be punished for helping Jace. The method? Still undecided. Meanwhile, Jocelyn, in full mom on alert mode, announces she's heading to Idris and invites Clary to come along. But the heart-to-heart is cut short by a demon attack, and Alec reluctantly brings Clary on the mission. They face off against a demon with strange new powers, leaving behind a corpse with a gaping hole in its chest. Elsewhere, Aldertree decides to play bargain bin movie villain and tortures Raphael with concentrated UV light, all to get Camille back. A terrified Simon runs to Magnus for help. They discover that Simon's blood is the only key to open a box containing Camille's grave dirt. Yes, this show's magical logic could make Tolkien jealous. The demon puts on a show of its own, hiding inside the first victim's body and launching a surprise attack on Lydia. The Institute goes into lockdown. Tension rises. The creature feeds on negative emotions, picking its targets like it's building the ultimate hate playlist. Meanwhile, Jace is interrogated with the soul sword. He confesses it all. His love for Clary, definitely not the brotherly kind. His his disagreement with Valentine, and his understanding of the Clave's corruption. He refuses blind loyalty and as a reward gets slapped with a life sentence. Magnus, ever fabulous, sets a trap for Camille and hands her over to the Clave, but peace doesn't last long. Valentine storms the City of Bones, kills a silent brother, and steals the soul sword, dragging Jace with him. Back at the Institute, the demon takes Isabelle for a spin, using her jealousy of Clary as a gateway. She attacks Alec and nearly kills him, but Clary keeps her cool, creates an opening, and Alec drives the demon out. Amid the chaos, Jocelyn is fatally wounded, and Clary can only watch, helpless, as her mother dies. Alec, consumed by guilt, isolates himself on the rooftop. Jace tries to comfort him but gets shut out. Clary, deep in grief, rushes to Magnus, begging for necromancy. Level-headed as ever, he shares the story of his own mother to prove that meddling with the dead never ends well. But Clary is already in the nothing left to lose phase and seeks out Iris Rouse, a warlock with strong "this won't end well" energy. In exchange for Jocelyn's resurrection, Iris demands a future favor, and we all know these deals never end with cupcakes. Meanwhile, Aldertree punishes Jace by grounding him from field missions. Isabelle, suffering from a demon wound that won't heal, accepts something called Yinfen, courtesy of Aldertree. It works instantly, but the price comes in installments. Simon goes home and tries to come clean with his mom. The result? She thinks he's losing his mind. Clary heads to the Warlock's clinic with Alec, who does his best to be the voice of reason. But it's too late. They walk straight into a trap. Iris plans to turn Clary into a demon incubator, but our redhead's got an ace up her sleeve, or rather, a mysterious rune on her palm. She unleashes a burst of divine sunlight, defeats Iris, and frees the captive girls, all without having the slightest clue what she just did. Still grieving, Clary is haunted by a mysterious new rune that appears without explanation. Jace, more paranoid than ever, tells her to keep it secret, but Clary does the exact opposite. She heads to the Iron Sister Citadel with Izzy, in search of answers. Aldertree grants permission, but plants a seed of doubt in Izzy's mind. What if Clary has demon blood too? Meanwhile, on a parallel mission, Simon tries to track down Luke. He crosses paths with Maya, and despite mutual suspicion and some verbal sparring, an unlikely partnership begins to form. Tired of the tense atmosphere, Magnus forces Alec to take a break, one that ends up exposing deep insecurities about Magnus's romantic past. At the Citadel, Clary is deemed pure by the sacred water, Izzy not so much. The drug Yinfen, made from vampire venom, screams demonic impurity and bars her from entry. Clary continues alone and is welcomed by Cleophas, who drops a bombshell. The soul sword could be used to wipe out all Downworlders, if activated by someone with angel blood. Meanwhile, Simon and Maya find Luke in full-blown, uncontrollable wolf mode. A memory of Jocelyn helps bring the Alpha back to his human self. Mission, bring Dad back, accomplished. On the romance front, Alec and Magnus reconcile, promising to work through things together. Everything seems to be settling down, until Cleophas reveals her true colors and meets with Valentine's followers. On another day, Alec packs his bags and moves in with Magnus, trying once and for all to break free from the emotional chains of his old life. But guess who shows up to share the new home? Jace, of course. He turns the couple's sanctuary into a hotel and manages to be more disconnected than bad Wi-Fi. Meanwhile, Simon tries to set up a date with Maya, which, as expected, doesn't go too well, especially with Jace acting as his love guru. On the other side of the city, Clary comments on a strange sound coming from the Institute, which, naturally, no one else can hear. Apparently, it's only audible to those carrying a hefty dose of drama. At the Institute, a bombshell drops. The Iron Sister Citadel has been attacked, Magdalena's dead, and Cleophas has vanished. Everyone immediately points fingers at the usual suspect, Valentine, because let's face it, if it smells like runes and looks like a genocide scheme, he's probably behind it. Izzy, disappointed in Clary for hiding new runes like someone sneaking cookies on a diet, distances herself and starts investigating the Yinfen trade on her own. She even tries to go undercover as a buyer, but Magnus steps in and lays it out. This isn't mundane business. Yinfen comes from vampire venom. Translation, this mess goes deep. Enter Luke, revealing that his dear sister Cleophas was actually a Valentine loyalist. Naturally, Clary, powered by her fake friend Radar, catches the slip when Cleophas calls her Clarissa, a nickname only her psychopath dad uses. Under pressure, Cleophas confesses Valentine's plan. He wants to activate the soul sword using a chained angel and a bolt of heavenly lightning. That strange sound Clary hears? It's the angel's cry. Izzy tries to help Alec with his love life, while Simon, following Jace's love advice, completely tanks his date with Maya. The result? A stern talking to from Maya, and absolutely no kisses. In the climax, Cleophas leads the group to a rooftop, where Valentine shows up for his signature hit and run. He escapes with Cleophas, leaving Jace and Clary behind, and there, in the middle of nowhere, they finally come face to face with the angel, chained, bleeding, and yet still able to speak directly to Clary, because when it comes to her, even celestial beings can't stay quiet. Meanwhile, Isabelle, now deep in the throes of withdrawal, rushes to Raphael in desperate need of vampire venom. He warns her it's more addictive than a couple's reality show, but she doesn't want to hear it. All this as Maurice and Max arrive at the Institute. The little guy is about to go through his first rune ceremony, and Alec, in full "this is who I am" mode, decides to host the event at Magnus's place, just to show his mom that his relationship isn't a phase. It's forever. Elsewhere, Valentine continues his terror tour. This time, he kidnaps Iris Rouse, using her daughter as leverage. His demand? A magical artifact. Because of course, threatening children is just another day at the office for our villain. In the midst of the chaos, Simon decides to finally open his heart and confess his feelings to Clary. They kiss, because who cares about the impending apocalypse when love is in the air? Max's ceremony takes place with a mix of Shadowhunters and Downworlders, which is always a recipe for drama. Ever the protector, Jace warns Magnus not to hurt Alec. Magnus, with his usual flair, assures him he's all in. Maris naturally throws enough shade to turn the Lightwoods family gathering into a battlefield, but then the real trouble begins. The stolen book Iris used releases a wave of chaotic magic, hallucinations, insecurities, and people swinging at invisible axes. Alec, overwhelmed by guilt, nearly throws himself off the balcony until Magnus, in full superhero reflex mode, saves him just in time. They discover that Iris stole the book under Valentine's orders, and the cherry on top, Clary is the key to the soul sword, the only one who can activate it thanks to her pure angel blood. Clary, who thought the biggest shock of the week was kissing Simon, now finds out she might be Daddy's favorite weapon of mass destruction. With the chaos momentarily at bay, Max's ceremony unfolds in a rare moment of peace. Raphael helps Izzy fight off the venom, and Jace finally has a heart-to-heart with his mom. Maris admits she's been losing it because Robert's been cheating on her, as if that excuses her from being the mother-in-law from hell. While the Lightwoods try to hold on to some shred of normalcy, Valentine welcomes a mysterious little girl, setting the stage for the next act of his horror show. Later on, Simon and Clary are hiding out on a boat, looking like they're starring in a 2000s emo music video, until Jace shows up and tells everyone to head back to the Institute. Their brooding moment gets cut short when Clary suddenly feels a burning pain in her hand. Demonic stigma deluxe. Magnus checks it out and breaks the news. It's a blood curse. The kind that doesn't go away unless someone dies or a miracle happens. The only shot at saving her? Finding little Madzi, a missing warlock. If she isn't found soon, the curse will make its way to Clary's heart. And Iris? Yeah, she can't undo it. Blood spells are the kind of promise not even therapy can fix. Meanwhile, Luke is trying to handle his pack of angry werewolves who want Clary dead before the soul sword is activated. Maya, especially, goes for the jugular. Luke manages to stop her and locks her up. Situation, complete chaos. Valentine, as usual, is emotionally blackmailing Madzi into training. At the same time, Alec realizes Izzy is missing and presses Aldertree for answers. Aldertree, of course, plays dumb. In the park, Jace and Clary find clues about Madzi, but Jace suspects it's all a trap set by Valentine. Clary, already weakened by the curse, makes Jace promise not to let her be used as bait. Elsewhere, Raphael and Meliorn meet with Luke to debate Clary's fate. The verdict from the Downworld: she has to die. Jace decides to go rogue, leaving Simon to protect Clary, but when Luke's warning comes in, panic hits. Alec finds out Izzy has been feeding off Raphael and storms the vampire lair. Cue a family drama so intense it would make a telenovela blush. Jace finds Valentine with Madzi and bluffs, saying he'll let Clary die. Shockingly, it works. Valentine hands the girl over, but on the way back, Madzi, still loyal to Valentine, paralyzes Jace with magic, and Clary gets captured. Simon and Jace discover a body, one of Valentine's experiments. They realize his plan involves using Downworlder prisoners as weapons. Alec confronts Aldertree with everything he knows, takes control of the Institute, and organizes a rescue mission for Clary. In the final stretch, Jace and Luke storm Valentine's hideout. Valentine is moments away from using Clary to activate the sword. Simon tries to stop him but gets brutally taken down. The pieces are set. The apocalypse is one rune away. The city seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, but the Institute was practically wide open, since most of the Shadowhunters had been forced into some kind of mandatory vacation, aka another mission. And of course, Valentine, with the charm of a politician in an election year, seizes the opportunity to break in using a warlock child, Madzi, as a magical battering ram. Lovely, right? Using a kid to smash through angelic security. The guy even has the audacity to call Clary, like one of those absentee dads who only show up to drop an ultimatum. Either she shows up within the hour to activate the soul sword, or Simon gets a one-way ticket to the afterlife. Clary, in full, guilt-ridden protagonist mode, prepares for the noble sacrifice, but Jace and Luke intercept her. In the middle of all the tension, they run into Dot, who's finally broken free from Valentine's emotional chokehold, and she drops a bombshell. The angel's prophecy wasn't about Clary, it was about a Morgenstern with demon blood. Magnus puts the pieces together faster than a detective in a police procedural and arrives at the obvious conclusion. It's Jace. And no, somehow no one figured this out earlier. New plan. Instead of Clary activating the sword, Jace will play the martyr and destroy the divine artifact. Very sound judgment all around. The Downworld leaders, tired of losing members like it's a clearance sale, agree to the plan. Raphael and the werewolves sign a temporary truce. Basically, we'll stop hunting Clary just for today, cool? The attack on the Institute is staged like a co-op RPG. Alec and Aldertree head to the roof to try and shut down the heavenly generator. Clary and Magnus portal in to rescue Simon, and Jace leads the Downworlder squad. Inside, Magnus finds Madzi and tries to rescue her from Valentine's interdimensional gaslighting. Clary, in full no time for nonsense mode, saves Simon from death by forced dehydration. Yep, the guy was basically a sun-dried tomato, and gives him her own blood. Result, Simon revives, but now with a thirst that would make Edward Cullen look restrained. Valentine, ever the drama queen, captures Clary and tries to force her hand onto the soul sword. But then Jace shows up and grabs the sword to destroy it, except, surprise, the weapon explodes in a burst of divine energy, frying every Downworlder inside. Jace, however, walks away untouched. Why? Because, plot twist, he's got angel blood, not demon blood. Cue soap opera level revelation. Valentine was never Jace's father, and Clary isn't his sister. It was all a manipulative charade, like a reality show starring a dysfunctional family. And the prize? A divine weapon activated by the mistake of a misled boy. While everyone's still processing the chaos, Jace finally works up the nerve to tell Clary they're not related. But before the romantic tension can peak, something even more shocking happens. Simon, who should have been vaporized like the rest of the Downworlders, is walking calmly in the sunlight. And this little biological miracle, just the beginning of the next big mess. While everyone's still trying to wrap their heads around how Simon became the first daylighter vampire in the universe, Jace and Alec decide to deal with their tension the good old-fashioned way, with fists. Alec, as subtle as a jackhammer, pushes Jace to spill the truth that he and Clary aren't actually siblings, but Jace stays tight-lipped, determined not to drop that emotional bomb on Clary, not while she's happy with Simon, daylighter status and all. Speaking of them, Clary and Simon are having their own little sunscreen commercial moment, but even as Simon walks in daylight like the lead in a teen rom-com, he starts to suspect this solar blessing might come with some serious Chernobyl-level side effects. Clary, of course, brushes it off, ever the optimist. But peace lasts shorter than a controversial tweet. Alec calls everyone to the Institute for an emergency meeting with their new boss, Inquisitor Herondale. Sounds like a villain, looks like one too. Meanwhile, Valentine's being interrogated in full, I'm not saying a word mode, and the soul sword, damaged by Jace's angelic explosion, is now in purification mode. Translation, it's out of commission. The Clave's truth-extracting magic toy is broken, and Valentine's acting like he's got the upper hand. In the middle of all this political mess, a sinister attack goes down at a bar. 2 Shadowhunters dead, bodies covered in weird black sand. CSI-level mystery. Meanwhile, Izzy's at rock bottom, dealing with vampire venom withdrawal like an ex stalking her ex's Insta stories. Still, she tells Alec to go investigate the massacre. On the werewolf side of things, Luke's got his own problem. Russell, a rebellious wolf, challenges his leadership and suggests the pack should hunt mundanes to boost their strength. Luke keeps the peace, but his authority is looking shakier than a cracked apartment wall. Desperate, Izzy runs to Raphael at the Hotel D'Amour, begging for just one more hit. He refuses, saying he's doing it because he cares. Classic, it's for your own good move. Rejected, Izzy ends up in an alley, surrounded by a hungry vampire. But wait, enter Sebastian, mysterious, British, and a total vampire-slaying heartthrob, a Shadowhunter from London with K-drama anti-hero vibes. Back at the Institute, analysis confirms. That black sand, it's demonic residue from Azazel, a legit prince of hell. Fancy, right? Alec and Raphael rush out to find Izzy, last seen heading toward a vampire den. All they find is her broken necklace. Cue immediate conclusion. Azazel took her. Out of options, they go with plan B. Deal with the devil. Literally. Valentine offers a trade. Summon Azazel and give himself up for Izzy. Of course, he's got a trick up his sleeve. He drops Jace's big secret on the table just to stir up some chaos. Under pressure, Jace finally tells Clary the truth. No sugarcoating. We're not siblings. That whole story, one of Valentine's twisted fanfics. Clary understandably loses it. Meanwhile, Sebastian's taking care of Izzy in his apartment, offering her an antidote vote for withdrawal and racking up points on the dangerous new crush scale. Raphael warns Simon that being a daylighter is like walking around with a bullseye, way too rare to go unnoticed. The summoning begins with Magnus in charge. Azazel shows up, mocks everyone, and reveals he's not the one holding Izzy. The containment spell fails. Surprise, someone didn't check the runes properly. The demon unleashes a magical attack on Valentine, but it hits Jace, and then Azazel just vanishes. Total chaos. Izzy calls Alec, says she's okay, but she needs to handle things her own way. Clary reunites with Jace, who's acting off. Magnus approaches, and Jace, now ice cold and dripping with disdain, spits out Warlock like it's poison. The twist? That's not Jace, it's Magnus. Yep, they swapped bodies. On the other side of the Institute, things are bordering on absurd. Magnus Bane is trapped in Valentine's body, that mystical dictator cosplay, and Valentine, now rocking glowing eyes and a magical scarf, is strutting freely in Magnus's body. What does he want? The mortal cup. How? By forcing Magnus to help him. A brilliant plan, if it weren't completely psychotic. Alec, suspicious of the cold way Magnus has been treating everyone, decides to check on the prisoner. There, the real Magnus tries to prove who he is by revealing personal secrets and telenovela-worthy confessions. Alec wavers, but Jace, always the devil's advocate, tells him to ignore it. Classic Valentine move, he says, and the seed of doubt is planted. Meanwhile, Clary and Jace become lab rats. The Clave decides they need to be tested due to their angelic abilities. Clary's runes have stopped working since Azazel's attack, and Inquisitor Herondale seizes the opportunity to humiliate her with that bureaucratic smugness only a lifelong public servant can pull off. Far from the magical drama, Izzy opens up to Simon about her vampire venom addiction. As emotional payback, they decide to hit Raphael where it hurts, his family. They send him a picture with Rosa, his older sister, just to prove they can get close. The blackmail works, but ends in a clash. Simon literally shines and scares off an aggressive vampire. Back at the body swap circus, Valentine tries to break into the cell where his real body is locked up. Too bad he forgot one crucial detail. The cell was magically sealed by Magnus himself. The Inquisitor, fed up with watching the villain roam free, decides Valentine must be executed. Alec, torn between logic and emotion, helps set up the execution chair. Yes, he's helping kill the love of his life, but technically, it's the body of the show's biggest villain. Confusing? Imagine how he feels. At the exact moment of execution, Valentine, still in Magnus's body, crashes the scene, shatters the illusion, and drops the season's biggest bomb. Jace is a Herondale, direct grandson of the Inquisitor. The woman who was pale with rage seconds ago now hugs him like he's the last piece of cake at a party. Chaos erupts. Valentine uses Jace as a human shield and demands his freedom. He needs a portal, and Clary is the only one who can make it, but her mind is more blocked than dial-up internet. Sebastian steps in with his alternative therapy approach. Feel the pain, girl. Suffer. Clary dives into the anguish of losing her mom, and the whole Jace isn't my brother melodrama. And boom, she creates a new rune, opens the portal. Valentine vanishes into thin air, leaving everyone stunned. What the hell just happened? Magnus, finally freed, is a wreck. Simon becomes Isabelle's emotional crutch as she decides to seek help. And Clary, overwhelmed by too many truths, hears Simon confess his feelings. And yes, he wants to know if her brother just became his competition. Meanwhile, the Inquisitor hands Jace a ring, the Herondale ring, because nothing says, "Welcome to the family," like a symbolic accessory in a mountain of expectations. In the pulsing heart of New York City, as Simon braces himself for his first solo gig, the tension in the air could be cut with a wooden stake. Clary, by his side, tries to calm his nerves, even though her own soul is hanging by a thread. Not far off, Jace struggles to adjust to the weight of the Herondale name. When rehearsal is interrupted with all the grace of a punch to the face, a Shadowhunter is found dead, stripped of their runes like the victim of some satanic surgery. And of course, the blame immediately falls on a werewolf, because the Clave's logic always follows the motto, blame first, maybe investigate later. With the arrival of Imogen Herondale, Inquisitor and Jace's grandmother, the Institute goes full Spanish Inquisition. Luke, trying not to get deep fried in holy oil, volunteers his DNA. Meanwhile, Simon, the vampire world's newest rising star, is approached by a group of Fang fanatics who treat him like the Messiah. Simon, who just wants to sing his emo tunes and pay rent, gracefully declines the cult. The Inquisitor, clearly charmed by the Herondale pedigree, drops a bomb. She appoints Jace as the new head of the Institute. Alec, naturally, looks like he just swallowed a demon, but the macabre party doesn't stop there. More Shadowhunters turn up dead. The crime scene staged as if every Downworlder species decided to enter a themed murder competition. Vampires, sea Heelys, warlocks, all framed in what could only be the work of a psychopath with a flair for the theatrical. Desperate and with no time for interspecies politics, Jace obeys the Clave's order. Every Downworlder must provide a DNA sample. Obviously, that goes sideways. Magnus, with centuries of persecution trauma wrapped in elegance, refuses. So does Simon. After all, no institution that demanded genetic IDs ever ended up on the right side of history. Amid this chaos, Clary is attacked and drugged. Simon finds her disoriented and brings her to the Institute, only to be greeted by Jace with a straight-up "get out." Simon, not one to be sidelined, refuses. The Inquisitor, ever the sadist, throws him into a cell without blinking. And to make things worse, the Clave decides to implant tracking chips in all Downworlders. Magnus flips, Alec argues, Jace folds. The result? Maya, who resists the implant, ends up in the cell next to Simon. Meanwhile, Isabelle searches for answers with Raphael, who swears on his undead honor that no vampire would ever desecrate runes, a practice tied to ancient horrors. He points them to Kaylee, a Seelie with a thirst for revenge. Isabelle and Alec track her down, trailed by Max, the pint-sized Shadowhunter who ditched the Institute thinking that was a great idea. They find Kaylee, who confesses with the icy calm of someone who's planned this for years. Her motive? Revenge on Jace for her brother's death. Her plan? Destroy the Accords by framing the entire Downworld. After a tense fight and Max nearly becoming a tragic footnote, the siblings capture her. With the killer unmasked, Jace owns up to his massive screw-up. As his first and final act of leadership, he hands the reins to Alec, and Alec, riding high on principle, tears down the oppressive protocols. He cancels the tracking, frees Simon and Maya, and heads to Magnus with an apology fit for a telenovela. They reconcile, because this love, at least, survives. Later, at Hunter's Moon, Simon sings to a packed crowd of vampire fans. Now officially his gothic fan club, Jace, still carrying the weight of the world, seeks out Maya to personally remove her chip. She challenges him to prove he's over Clary, and he proves it, with a kiss that clearly wasn't just an excuse to see where things might go. And amid this new rhythm of kisses and reconciliations, Jace seeks a moment of silence. At the Institute, the sound of a piano echoes down the empty halls. Jace, now a former leader with a fresh batch of trauma, plays a melody worthy of an HBO drama. He's interrupted by Sebastian, a new hunter transferred from London with impeccable timing, and a charm that practically screams red flag. He compliments the performance, and Jace, never one to leave a wound unopened, reveals he learned to play thanks to Valentine, who used his son's fingers as keys whenever he hit the wrong note. Meanwhile, Alec, in his paranormal student council president era, pitches a bold idea, forming a cabinet of Downworlder representatives within the Institute. Naturally, the Shadowhunters react as if someone just summoned a demon in the middle of the room, but Alec's not backing down. He recruits Clary and Jace for a diplomatic mission. The Seelie Queen wants to meet Valentine's experiments, and only them. Alec also tries to get Luke to join the cabinet. Luke, nobody's fool, says words aren't enough. The Clave either executes Valentine or destroys the Soul Sword. Alec promises to fight for the execution, and that secures Luke's involvement. Meanwhile, Simon, Clary's emotional sidekick, insists on tagging along with her and Jace. Even after Jace reminds him that fairies have the moral compass of a psychotic cat, Simon signs up for the trip. In the heart of Central Park, they dive into a water portal straight out of a dark Narnia spin-off. Back at the Institute, Alec asks Magnus to keep things strictly professional during meetings, a request clearly born from the fear of becoming a meme at the next summit. And because Disaster loves company, Maris shows up to praise Alec and drop the bomb that her marriage is sinking faster than a reality TV romance. In the Seelie realm, everything is beautiful, magical, and 100% lethal. Simon nearly becomes tree food, and Jace saves him, driving home the point that, when it comes to fairies, trust no one. They meet the Seelie Queen, who chooses to appear as a child. She lets Simon stay, but quickly proves she knows more than she should, including the fact that he's a daylighter. When asked about Kaylee, she admits another fairy was involved, but says she's already taken care of it. With a villainous Disney smile, she separates Simon for a private chat. Back in the land of the living, the cabinet holds its first meeting. The tension is thick, things spiral when Magnus, pressed for full disclosure, drops a bomb. Azazel swapped bodies with Valentine, and the villains strutted around as Magnus like it was an official cosplay. Luke, fed up with the institutional chaos, storms out with a "you deal with it" attitude. In the Enchanted Forest, the Queen tries to poison Simon against the Shadowhunters, saying he'll always be an outsider to them. But Simon, loyal like a dog in a feel-good movie, turns her down and reaffirms where his loyalty lies. Meanwhile, Sebastian, already radiating telenovela villain energy, confronts Raphael and warns him to stay away from Isabelle, acting like he owns all her emotional baggage. In a dark corner of the Institute, an informant leads Luke to Valentine's cell. Fueled by revenge, Luke nearly finishes the job, but Alec stops him at the last second. second. The two share a moment of, I know you tried to kill the villain, but please don't blow up diplomacy. Back in the Seelie realm, the queen reveals her cruelest card. Jace and Simon are entangled in magical vines. The only way to break the spell? The kiss Clary desires most. Clary kisses Simon and nothing happens. The vines tighten, heart heavy, eyes on the past. Clary kisses Jace. The spell shatters. Simon, shattered too, walks away without a word. Elsewhere in the chaos, Isabelle finally opens up to her mother. She's battling an addiction to Yin Fen. Maris, no longer the cold figure she once was, blames herself, acknowledging she was part of the problem. Raphael tries to reconnect, but Isabelle, now clear-headed and sober, pushes him away with the honesty of someone who knows not all feelings are real. Sometimes, it's just withdrawal in disguise. Later, Alec confronts Luke about the near execution of Valentine. He chooses not to punish him, knowing a scandal would wreck the fragile alliance. But both now understand one thing. There's a traitor inside the Institute. Outside the portal, Clary, Jace, and a bruised and broken Simon regroup. The tension is palpable. Clary notices something moving in the shadows. A wolf, watching them. As the trio returns to the city with more questions than answers, an even darker secret is revealed. In a secluded basement, the real Sebastian is chained up, held captive by an imposter. The same imposter now walks free inside the Institute, at Valentine's side. Simon, devastated and feeling like the ultimate emotional reject of the Downworld, retreats to one of those dark corners where depressed vampires drown themselves in plasma, a kind of steroid-laced energy drink for bloodsuckers. There, a vampire named Heidi shows up, her charm as trustworthy as a dating app at 3 a.m. As Simon breaks down, the plasma hits him harder than a teenager at an indie music festival. At the Institute, Alec notices something's off with Magnus. Being the devoted boyfriend he is, Alec tries to talk but gets the classic, "It's not you, it's me." Valentine is about to be transferred, but before that, Jace and Izzy go in for a little rune cleansing on the villain. But Valentine decides to ruin the moment with a bombshell. He injected angel blood into Jace's mother while she was still pregnant. Yep, he basically turned his son into a divine science experiment with abs. And of course, he has to twist the knife. Tells Jace that his love for Clary will be his downfall. Meanwhile, Clary tries to salvage what's left of her relationship with Simon, but he gives it to her straight, no mercy. The Seelie Queen had already spoiled it. Clary's most desired kiss was with Jace. After years in the friend zone, fueled by false hope, Simon gives up. And he finishes it all off with one of those heartbreaking lines, "I loved you my whole life." Right after, Simon wakes up hungover to the news that a girl has been found dead. And because, of course, his fingerprints are on her bracelet. Congrats to the unluckiest guy of the year. He turns to Raphael for help, but the vampire does what he does best, blackmail. He wants to know how Simon became a daylighter. Before things can turn violent, the police storm in and arrest Simon. But he notices one important detail. The victim was bitten on her feet, and everyone knows Simon's not into that kind of kink. Luke and Clary discover that Heidi turned the girl, and Quinn was the one who killed her. Raphael, ever the expert at solving problems off the record, takes care of Quinn. Luke, a veteran of the Shadowworld, pays a warlock to wipe the memory of his investigation partner, Ollie. Alec finally confronts Magnus and hears the truth. As a child, Magnus used magic to kill his abusive stepfather. The revelation strengthens their bond and reminds us why this couple is the emotional anchor of the entire series. Simon meets with Clary, and the two try to rebuild their friendship. Valentine is finally transferred to Idris, or so it seems. One of the guards was paid off, and Valentine escapes, dramatic villain style. On the other end, Sebastian, or rather, Jonathan. He calls Valentine father and confirms the plan worked. In New York, Simon deals with the breakup the way a brooding vampire would, isolated, guilt-ridden, and borderline numb. Maya, ever the good friend and possible crush, drags him to a Yom Kippur dinner. Nothing like Jewish food and pretending to be a couple to cope with ancient and supernatural trauma. At the Institute, Robert Lightwood, yes, Alec's dad, with his long track record of emotional blunders, shows up to oversee the hunt for Valentine. Alec, temporarily in charge, handles it the only way he knows how, focused, pragmatic, and swallowing his frustration. Jace tries to head to Idris, but the Clave says no. Clary says that she'll create the portal herself, and she actually does. She ends up at Lake Lynn, where she begins to have hallucinations, as if she had drunk the wrong tea at a mystical festival. Meanwhile, Maya bonds with Simon's mom. Alec and Izzy track the portal to the lake and realize Clary's in danger. Izzy, the fiercest warrior of them all, goes in solo to rescue her friend. She finds Clary tripping hard, and Jace trying to keep her from attacking them. With a healing rune and a lot of patience, Izzy brings Clary back to almost normal mode. In the nightmare cabin, Jonathan forces Valentine to admit what we all suspected, that despite everything, he was the favorite son. Back at the Institute, Robert drops a bomb on Alec. The clave lied. The soul sword was never recovered, kind of a key detail when making political decisions. After all the drama, Simon and Maya share a moment. Something new begins to spark. But in Idris, Valentine's journals reveal the worst. Jonathan Christopher is alive. And dinner, it's now being served by Jonathan to a chained-up Valentine. So, Clary decides to track down Jonathan. Just one tiny problem. The keepsake box that could lead them to him has vanished. Guess who took it? That's right, Jonathan. Never misses a chance for some good old family drama. He claims the box was a gift meant to prove Jocelyn feared him. At the Institute, they find out the soul sword is no longer part of Valentine's little power play. New plan? Gather all 3 mortal instruments to summon the angel Raziel and make a wish. Because that's exactly what every villain needs. A magical wish card and 0 therapy. Meanwhile, a new Sebastian Verlac arrives in New York, and he makes quite the entrance by killing a warlock for intel on the mortal mirror. A protective sigil transfers to Dot, who rushes to the Institute. Turns out, she's got the mirror now. Clary and Jace follow the trail and finally confront Jonathan. Clary goes for redemption. Jace is more into the where do I stick the sword approach. Jonathan strikes. Dot sacrifices herself and destroys the mirror to keep it out of Valentine's hands. That's what we call an extreme backup plan. Meanwhile, Max Lightwood, thrilled about his first mission, finds a strand of hair in the keepsake box. Naturally, he does what any brilliant kid would do, activates the tracking rune. The problem? The trail leads him straight to Sebastian, and brave little Max uncovers the unthinkable. Sebastian is Jonathan. While Luke and Maya try to clean up the chaos caused by a mundane scratch by a werewolf, just another day in the Downworld, the Seelie Queen emerges as a far greater problem. Never known for her diplomacy, she drops a bombshell in Magnus and Luke's lap. Either they join her against the clave, or be crushed in the war that's already beginning to roar. At the Institute, peace goes out the window when Max is found unconscious, lying on the floor of his own room. A brutal attack, meticulously erased. Alec, with his trademark enough is enough look, declares a lockdown. And if there's one thing Alec doesn't joke about, it's security. As paranoia takes over, Clary slips into detective mode and follows the trail to Jonathan's belongings. Yes, the same Jonathan always cosplaying as Sebastian. Apparently Max poked where he shouldn't have and got silenced for it. Jace recalls Valentine's journals, and a light bulb goes off. Jonathan, because of his demon blood, can't even touch Electrum. Time for the metal test. One by one, the Shadowhunters are tested. Sebastian, of course, flinches. The mask falls, the fists fly, and pain doesn't faze our villain from Edom. He escapes. Of course he does. Meanwhile, in a dramatic move, Clary activates a rune to destroy what they believe is the mortal mirror. The dust settles, but the damage remains. Magnus, torn between his people and his heart, decides to break things off with Alec. Luke fully embraces leadership of the pack, and Clary, realizing the mirror was destroyed far too easily, has a revelation. The mortal mirror was never an object, it's a place. Lake Lynn. The Inquisitor, always with that told you so look, confirms it. The real Sebastian Verlac's body was just another demonic trap. And to complete the apocalypse bingo, Valentine now has the mortal cup. Clary and Jace, ever the restless protagonists, reveal what they've figured out. Lake Lynn is the true mirror. The Inquisitor, about as warm as a brick wall, decides to send guards over there. Alec, done waiting for orders, calls on the Downworld. Spoiler, it doesn't go well. At the meeting, the one calling the shots is the Seelie Queen, showing up all grand and self-declared as the voice of the Downworlders. Magnus is already on her side, and so are Luke and Raphael. Alec stands there, swallowing the betrayal with a hint of bitterness. Meanwhile, Clary begs Simon to use his daylighter status to get an audience with the Queen. He goes, and what he gets in return is a proposal that borders on indecent. He says no. Elsewhere, Valentine and Jonathan realize the portals are blocked. Plans ruined. A cemetery becomes the stage for the next disaster. An ambush full of demons, and the team splits to survive the chaos. Jonathan and Jace face off in a brotherly duel that would make George R.R. Martin proud. Jonathan taunts, Jace resists, and Izzy shows up just in time, whip in hand and words sharper than steel. Jace finishes off his brother, and then Maya is gone. Only her necklace remains. Deep in the woods, the Seelie Queen seals her darkest deal yet. Valentine is her new ally. Maya, now the Queen's prisoner, refuses to cooperate. The result? Exile to the Enchanted Woods, which are anything but enchanting. Meanwhile, New York is overrun by a new breed of demons with a thirst for destruction. Alec and Izzy do their best to hold the line. Clary and Jace rush to Idris. Valentine must be stopped. But of course, nothing goes as planned. Instead of reinforcing reinforcements, they're met with betrayal. Consul Malachi, a longtime Valentine sympathizer, arrests them both. As chaos escalates, Alec finally swallows his pride and reaches out to Magnus. He agrees. Together, they track down the demon rift, only to find it's already empty. With a feat worthy of a warlock Nobel, Magnus seals the portal. At Lake Lynn, Valentine summons Raziel, but first, he kills Jace. No speech, no theatrics, just a dagger and cold blood. From afar, Alec feels the death of his parabatai like a blade through his soul. The angel appears. Valentine demands his personal genocide. Clary, with nothing left to lose, strikes back. She kills her father and makes her own wish. Jace is brought back to life. The celebration at Hunter's Moon tries to be festive, but it's bittersweet. Alec and Jace reconnect. Magnus and Alec rekindle their relationship. Clary and Jace smile, but they're hiding a secret. Elsewhere, Ollie drops a bombshell. She knows Luke is a werewolf, and from the ashes, a new threat rises. Jonathan's mother is back, and she's not here to play nice. While Alec tries to run the New York Institute without loosening his tie, he starts noticing that Jace is acting even weirder than usual. The parabatai isn't buying the miraculous survival story, and the tension between them is straight out of a telenovela. Out in the real world, Luke does his best to keep Ollie away from the shadow world, but the mundane is nosier than a cat in a cardboard box. Meanwhile, Magnus, former high warlock and current existential crisis holder, pretends everything's fine as he watches Alec consider an offer from Idris that could put an ocean between them. Izzy, now stepping up as weapons master, helps Clary choose her combat blades, and because the writers clearly missed the drama, the chosen Cain turn out to have belonged to none other than Valentine and Jocelyn. Nothing like holding your genocidal father's and martyred mother's heirlooms to start your day off right. Elsewhere, Simon, everyone's favorite geeky vampire, gets kidnapped by the Sealies. The queen brands a symbol onto his forehead and lets him go with a warning that sounds more like a riddle from a bored sphinx. And because hell never takes a vacation, a demon possesses a nurse who immediately goes full serial killer mode. Naturally, the Shadowhunters are on the case. Jace starts having dreams of zombie versions of himself attacking Clary, courtesy of Jonathan's mental meddling. Clearly, coming back from the dead has an emotional resurrection fee. During a chase, Luke is forced to wolf out right in front of Ollie. So much for keeping secrets. Clary and Jace, now operating in demon-slaying duo mode, take down the possessed nurse and earn themselves one more trauma for the scrapbook. Simon and Maya patch things up. Alec throws the Idris offer in the trash for love of Magnus, but whoever said this show was about happy endings. While holding Clary close, Jace feels the sudden urge to stab her. Love, fear, and demonic possession, all in one hug. Far away, a new villain welcomes the freed nurse, calling him her disciple. In the magical world of oversized egos and glitter, Magnus and Alec are the reluctant guests at a party thrown by the new High Warlock of Brooklyn, Lorenzo Ray, a peacock with a diploma, arrogance, and zero charisma. The magic glitches mid-party, panic erupts, and Lorenzo, of course, accuses Magnus of cheating with help from Asmodeus, the demon realm's version of "my dad's gonna sue you." Pressured, Magnus drops the bomb. Asmodeus actually is his dad. Meanwhile, Jace plans a romantic date with Clary. Forgetting to mention it turns into an accidental double date with Simon and Maya. Cue collective awkwardness. Still, it gives Jace the push to open up about his feelings, and his fear that he's more monster than boyfriend. Simon and Maya remain rock solid, proving that someone in this show has to hold the emotional line. On the working side of things, Izzy and Luke investigate a new wave of demonic possessions. The footage reveals creatures so bizarre not even the Demonology for Dummies manual could ID them. Between one humiliation and another, Magnus investigates the mansion's ley lines and discovers something worse than Asmodeus, a darker entity pulling the strings. The solution? Use the angelic core of the Institute. And because drama is always on the menu, Raj and his gang try to sabotage everything by locking Alec out of the system. Alec powers through, manually releases the energy, and saves everyone in the nick of time. Just another day for the Shadowhunters, and Simon gets attacked by werewolves. The Seelie Queen's mark on his forehead lights up like an airport beacon, launching the werewolf sky high. On the other hand, Luke's pack revolts, demanding Simon leave the Jade Wolf. Rejected but determined, Simon decides to face the Seelie Queen to understand the mark, despite Maya's warning that she's cold and ruthless. Alec and Izzy try to distract their overbearing mother with a casual dinner at Magnus's place. Something glowing light. Meanwhile, Raphael deals with the loss of his sister Rosa, just as his rebellious fledgling Heidi escapes, not even a week without chaos. Jace uncovers a new lead, a victim who scared off the owl with pepper spray. If it burns, it must have flesh, maybe even a shred of humanity. A charity event becomes the stage for a showdown, and Izzy, ever ready, joins the trio of Shadowhunters. Meanwhile, Maris Lightwood reveals she's been branded a traitor by the Clave for her past in the Circle. Exile is knocking, but she reconciles with Alec and even praises Magnus for taking good care of her son. At the party, Jace chases who he thinks is Jonathan, only to find a hired idiot. The real owl attacks the actual target, Morgan, and vanishes. The final proof that this thing isn't Jonathan, Izzy hits it with her Electrum Whip. No effect at all. With Simon cast out of the wolf's den, Maya shows up as his safe harbor. But far from there, in the cult's underground lair, the owl delivers Morgan to its master, and there she is, revealing that this servant is just another pawn. The goal? To resurrect the true Jonathan Morgenstern. Later on, Jace wakes up in full-on moral hangover plus amnesia mode, not even sure if he had dinner. Clary, deep in denial, insists that the owl isn't Jonathan, but Jace is starting to suspect his brain is glitching harder than a beta app. Between blackouts and nightmares, he has a brilliant epiphany. Maybe it's all because of that wish Clary made. So of course he tells her to keep it secret, because if the Clave finds out, it's game over. At the Institute, Alec and Izzy discover that the mundane girl who was attacked is turning into a demon at a cellular level. Yeah, not even chamomile tea is fixing that. Meanwhile, Luke, now as rigid as an instruction manual, kicks Simon out. And in his supernatural hobo phase, Simon runs into Kyle, a sweet, mysterious cyclist. Kyle offers him a room. Simon says yes, and we all know that's going to blow up soon. Jace keeps showing someone help me vibes, but Alec goes for the hit him with the truth method. He suggests Jace inherited his mother's psychosis. Jace denies it, of course, and heads straight to Luke to confirm. Yep, Mama Jace was indeed unhinged, and with that, Jace spirals into a full-on psychological drama arc. The cherry on top? The big reveal. The owl is actually Jace himself, remotely piloted by Lilith like some luxury drone. She only loses the signal when he thinks about Clary, which is, well, weird. She sends him off to recruit more disciples. Meanwhile, Izzy looks into a string of vampire attacks and uncovers that Raphael created a daylighter vampire using ethics straight out of an 80s cartoon villain handbook. Enter Heidi, who now decides to return the favor by almost frying him in the sun. Clary and Izzy arrive just in time to save both the day and the vampire. Amid the chaos, a system glitch releases the demon possessing the mundane girl. Fed up, Izzy gives Raphael an ultimatum: leave town or get turned to ash by the Clave. That night, in classic teen sneaks out after prom fashion, Clary finds Jace in an alley, completely lost, breaking down in her arms, convinced he's losing his mind. And meanwhile, as if it were no big deal, Lilith shows up at Magnus Bane's door with a little problem. Magnus, New York's most stylish warlock, gets a visit from a mysterious woman with suspiciously dramatic vibes. She claims to be a friend of Ragnar Fell and asks for a love potion to help an ex-boyfriend soldier who's still obsessed with her. Classic. Magnus agrees, but there's one small catch. She'll have to give up a piece of her soul. Nothing too extreme, just a tiny vial of vital essence. Meanwhile, Jace decides to check himself into the City of Bones like it's a wellness retreat for tortured souls. Clary strongly disagrees. She's convinced his problem is mystical, not mental, so she sets off to find Luke's sister, Cleophas, in a mission that screams dysfunctional family quest. But first, she drops a bombshell on Luke. She used a magic wish to bring Jace back from the dead, as questionable as asking a demon for relationship advice. Alec, trying to build a love nest with Magnus, gets a dose of real talk instead. Elsewhere, Simon's gig gets sabotaged, and Maya channels her inner Sherlock with way more charisma. Jace visits Simon, meets his new roommate Kyle, and immediately smells trouble. And he's right. Kyle's from the Praetor Lupus, a secret society of hipster-looking guardians assigned to protect Simon and the mysterious rune on his forehead. Simon isn't thrilled about the 24/7 babysitting and bounces. Clary and Luke, after a tense road trip, find Cleophas, who reveals they can't contact the angels like they used to. But since Clary has angel blood, she might just be able to summon ethereal, and because this show loves a forbidden ritual, she decides to give it a shot. Izzy, attempting to live a normal life, goes on a date with Charlie, a mundane doctor. Their Grey's Anatomy Shadowhunter edition moment gets cut short when a disciple of Lilith attacks in an alley. Charlie, thinking she just tripped, rushes her to the hospital. Clary successfully summons the angel, who arrives full of revelations and celestial glow. But before he can name the true big bad, Lilith shows up in full boss mode, kills Ethereal, and knocks Clary flat. Jace feels the impact like a psychic punch and rushes to the City of Bones, now convinced he needs serious healing. Alec confronts Magnus about a suspicious little box. Inside, inside? Keepsakes from centuries of ex-lovers. Magnus explains, it's basically an immortal breakup scrapbook. Alec, for the first time, considers that his relationship might come with an expiration date. Simon, with Kyle now as a reluctant bodyguard, makes it to his rescheduled show. A woman offers him a drink and a toast to true love. But the potion ends up in the wrong hands. Lilith slips the soul fragment into the mix and hands it to Jace. One sip later, goodbye love, hello darkness. He's now 100% under the control of the Queen of Hell. Simon keeps training with Kyle and finds out Maya is on her way. But guess who else shows up? Uninvited and unhinged. Heidi, the resurrected vampire with a thirst for revenge. She crashes in full possessive girlfriend mode and demands Simon's undivided attention. Meanwhile, Alec and Magnus try to enjoy a romantic breakfast, but it turns into an epic heart-to-heart. Alec is haunted by the idea of aging, while Magnus remains forever young and dazzling. The vibe turns sour. Alec storms out, leaving Magnus with only memories. Marissa, now a rune-free ex-Shadowhunter mom, drops by for a visit. Alec and Izzy decide to lift the mood with a good old-fashioned family dinner, because supernatural drama can wait. But family brunch is sacred. Lilith sends the owl after her final pure soul. Just one more to go. And who struts back into the Institute looking like he just came back from a spa retreat? Jace, cold, detached, a boy who seems to have swapped his heart for a block of ice. Clary senses something's off, but she has no idea how deep the trouble runs. Meanwhile, Magnus meets with brother Zachariah, and together they uncover the shocking truth. Jace was never in the City of Bones. Worse, Lilith bought the potion with him, using a piece of Clary's soul stolen during the attack. The goal? To make Jace stop loving Clary. Mission accomplished. Simon tries to save Heidi from her own thirst for vengeance, but in a rare moment of emotional responsibility, hands her over to the Praetor Lupus. Clary calls Luke in a panic. Jace is the owl. Now everything clicks into place. And so, with the truth out in the open and hearts in pieces, the stage is set for the next battle. One of love, loyalty, and demons on the loose. And Lilith, she's just getting started. Nothing like starting the day with good news. Or not. Maya, still trying to get by with self-control and zero therapy, runs into Jordan. Yes, that ex who turned into a werewolf, freaked out, bitter, disappeared, and is now sharing a roof with Simon. The tension between furry past and nerdy present nearly turns into a bar brawl, and poor Simon has to step in before claws start flying on the couch. Meanwhile, Clary is stuck in statue mode thanks to a weird rune, and Simon does what any good friend would do, drags her to the Institute like it's her last chance to make the SATs. In a rare moment of honesty, Clary admits she brought Jace back to life with a wish. Magnus, weighed down by his fashion guilt, confesses he unknowingly helped Lilith by mixing an elixir for her. So yeah, everyone messed up. Now it's damage control time. The plan? Izzy suggests using something called the malec configuration. The mission heads to Alicante with Izzy, Alec, Clary, and Imogen, Jace's grandmother, who really didn't sign up for this. Meanwhile, Luke and Simon chase down clues from Ollie to find Lilith's evil lair. In Alicante, things almost fall apart when Consul Penhallow shows up. Alec distracts her with some diplomatic career talk while Izzy and Clary grab the cage. Jace, or rather the owl, manipulates Imogen and takes her to the cemetery of the disgraced. And of course, just to make things worse, he's after Valentine's remains. Luke and Simon find Lilith's lair, only to walk into a trap. The upside, the mark of Cain on Simon's forehead kicks into divine extermination mode and torches everything. Even Ollie, now full-on devil's disciple, tries to attack, but the mark repels her. Back in the now, Maya finally confronts Jordan, not just for the attack, but for disappearing when she needed him most. She refuses his apology, makes it clear she won't forget or forgive, and tells him to focus on the one job he has left, protecting Simon. In Alicante, Jace is finally caught desecrating Valentine's grave. Imogen realizes what's happening and sacrifices herself to buy time. With the malec configuration, the team captures Jace, but even behind bars, he drops the bomb. Lilith is coming for him, and by sunrise, no one will be left standing. Faced with the chaos, Magnus pitches a wild idea. Use the parabatai bond to break into Jace's mind. Alec agrees without hesitation, because that's love, diving headfirst into a shared coma for someone you consider a brother. Meanwhile, Clary stands trial before the clave. Under the effects of the soul sword, she's forced to confess that she used used Raziel's one wish to resurrect Jace. The fallout? She lost the ace that could have saved the world. The console looks at her like she just triggered humanity's expiration date. Maya, Simon, and Jordan stumble upon the aftermath of a sinister ritual, blood-filled bathtub, cocoon marked with Enochian symbols, definitely not covered by Airbnb. Lilith, on her end, visits the Seelie Queen, demanding the removal of the mark of Cain. The Queen refuses and even mocks her. I don't mess with one-of-a-kind masterpieces. Still, she throws in the owl's location as a consolation prize. Inside Jace's mind, Alec, Magnus, and Izzy face twisted memories, a terrified child version of Jace, and an emotional torture loop worthy of a daytime soap opera. Alec reaches the real Jace and convinces him he's truly there, but just as he tries to pull him out, Lilith shows up like a final boss nobody asked for, snatches Jace away, and wrecks the mission. Back at the Institute, Alec and Izzy return crushed. In Alicante, Clary receives her sentence, death. Once again, Magnus finds a way to free Jace, a spell that channels the power of 12 warlocks, but there's a catch. It requires the approval of the insufferable High Warlock Lorenzo Ray, who treats Magnus like a background extra in a bad soap opera. Meanwhile, locked away in Alicante, Clary learns from Iris Rouse that Imogen had planned to resurrect Valentine. During the trial, Clary makes a bold offer to bring Valentine back using a necromancy rune. The Clave agrees. Valentine returns, and wastes no time dropping some harsh truths, like the fact that Lilith injected her own blood into Jonathan while he was still in the womb. Shortly after, he's sacrificed by one of Lilith's followers, who burns his body and abducts Clary. Elsewhere, Heidi, the unhinged vampire, kidnaps Simon's family. She uses his mother as bait, forcing him to feed on her. Just when all seems lost, Izzy and Jordan arrive, but the damage is done. Simon is cast out of his home, treated like a monster. In the hideout of the hopeless, Magnus realizes there's only one way to gain the power he needs to save Jace. He must ask his father for help. Yes, that father, Asmodeus, a name that doesn't exactly scream trustworthy. Lilith bursts in with a revelation straight out of a telenovela finale. She's Jonathan's mother. Yes, the same Jonathan who became a fashion-forward corpse and is now everyone's obsession. With twisted affection and top-tier manipulation, she rewrites the boy's childhood, casting Valentine and Jocelyn as the real villains. Jonathan, of course, becomes the misunderstood crybaby, and like any good demonic mother, she vows to restore her baby with the power of love, or maybe possession. Meanwhile, Jace turns into a zombie under Lilith's control, handing Clary over like a soulless mailman. No emotion, no expression, just possessed doll efficiency. Clary tries to reach him emotionally, but nothing pierces the armor of apathy he wears. Alec realizes things have taken a dark turn and sets out with the team to fix it. Magnus, tired of being gorgeous and useless, decides to go to hell, literally. He opens a portal to Edom, his demonic ancestral homeland, and faces his absentee father, Asmodeus, the prince of hellfire. His farewell with Alec could make a stone cry. In Edom, the reunion is colder than an ex's heart. Asmodeus whines about being abandoned, but his fatherly hug comes with fine print. Power has a price. Back in New York, Simon faces every sensitive vampire's worst nightmare, telling his mom he's a monster. Spoiler, it doesn't go well. She reacts like she just saw a flying cockroach. The result, Simon erases her memory. To protect her, sure, but also to protect himself. Clary, meanwhile, is the key piece in Jonathan's resurrection ritual, and the team discovers the building she's in has turned into a hell fortress. Luke, now jobless and with free time, acts as a deluxe distraction while the others sneak in. Simon becomes the secret weapon, wielding the mark of Cain as a walking shield. Inside the tower, Alec finds Jace, but fighting your parabatai is like punching your own reflection. Impossible. Magnus, however, chooses to pay the price. He gives up his immortality to free Jace. Lilith's hold shatters in an instant. Jace collapses, so does Magnus, but one wakes up free and the other mortal. At the top of the tower, Clary plays the strategist. She throws in Lilith's face that the mark of Cain could blow up the ritual. Lilith takes the bait and attacks Simon. The result? Boom! Lilith dissolves into evil glitter, and Clary vanishes, disintegrates, disappears, gone. When Jace arrives, all he finds is rubble, regret, and absolutely no sign of Clary. Except, plot twist, Clary isn't dead. She wakes up not in heaven, but in a hellish Airbnb somewhere in Siberia. And who's there with her? Jonathan, of course. Alive, fully intact, and rocking his original face like he just had a supernatural glow-up. He explains that the rune on her chest brought her back, talk, and now the two of them are more connected than hipster cafe Wi-Fi. So connected, in fact, that she can't even try to escape into the snowy wilderness without him stopping her with a protective brother speech. Deep down, Clary knows she's trapped in some twisted family reality show with a certified psychopath. Back at the magical mundane's apartment, Magnus is adjusting to his new chapter, co-parenting Madsy with Alec in full improvised dad's mode. But without his magic, their sweet home turns into a vulnerable target. Enter Iris Rouse, an old nemesis and dark sorceress extraordinaire. She breaks in and tries to kidnap Madsy, but Magnus drives her away. Jace, meanwhile, spirals into emo mode, like deleted his Instagram level of emo. Alec shakes him out of it, reminding him that Clary didn't die so he could become a brooding zombie, and drags him back into the fight. Maya returns, finds Simon in full guilt trip mode, and vows to help him remove the cursed mark of Cain. Because let's be real, no relationship survives the ability to kill someone with a glance. Jace and Luke, in a rare moment of useful detective work, figure out that the explosion site didn't blow up. It teleported, which is good news, because now there's hope Clary might still be alive. And as if that wasn't enough, they set a trap for Iris using a fake letter and some glamours. It works. They capture the witch before she can extract any secrets from Magnus. Simon and Maya then seek out Raphael, who drops a new urban legend. There's an ancient vampire hiding in the sewers who might know how to erase the mark. At the Institute, the consul shows up with news. Clary's been pardoned, posthumously. Alec, never one to take political BS or torture lightly, confronts her about rumors coming out of the guard. She denies everything with a poker face, but in a hidden cell, a prisoner reminds us, the real secrets are only just beginning. Feeling humiliated by his own vulnerability, Magnus decides it's time to learn how to fight without magic. Naturally, Alec steps in as his battle coach. Simon gears up for a sewer-deep hunt, with Maya as his trusted backup. Meanwhile, in Siberia, Clary begins to realize Jonathan's plans are much bigger. He wants to go to Paris, and when the two of them touch, the rune on her chest and the one on his back glow in eerie sync, a dark, unsettling light. Jonathan smiles and whispers, "We're one now, little sister." In New York City, Simon and Isabelle brave the foul-smelling sewers and come face to face with none other than Cain, the original vampire. He reveals that the mark was originally a gift from the Seelie Queen. Yes, a gift, which has now turned into a curse. To get rid of it, Simon has to use the very stone that killed Abel. Spoiler, it's not exactly standard therapy. The stone must be taken to the Seelie Queen, the only one capable of performing the ritual. Magnus keeps himself busy with a packed schedule, like someone trying to fill a planner after getting laid off. Alec, ever the voice of reason, grounds him back in the present. Meanwhile, Jace and Luke track down Jonathan's apartment and put together a mission to raid his mobile lair. Jonathan, for his part, wants more than just family ties. He's after the Morningstar sword. To get it, he takes Clary to a demon-run antique shop in disguise. She tries to get help from a passing Shadowhunter, but the poor guy doesn't believe her and ends up brutally killed by Jonathan. "I did it for you," he says, like every romantically inclined sociopath ever. Simon and Isabelle finally reach the Seelie Queen. The ritual to remove the mark is so excruciating it nearly kills Simon. Isabelle, in a moment of reckless devotion, offers him her blood to save his life. Risking venom? Absolutely. But since when is love rational? When Jonathan is cornered, Clary cries out the harsh truth. If he dies, so does she. It's the kind of contract clause no one reads. The team pulls back. Clary and Jace reunite, but relief is tangled with dread. The enemy isn't defeated, not even close. In fact, he now literally runs through Clary's veins. At the Institute, Clary finally reunites with her friends. But of course, she can't just give them a hug and pretend everything's fine. With all the casualness of a weather update, she drops the bomb. Lilith carved a rune binding her to Jonathan. If he dies, she goes down with him. Soulmates, but make it a nightmare. As if the whole demonic family drama weren't enough, the gang finds out Jonathan is hunting the Morningstar sword. They decide the best plan is to get to it first and use the artifact as bait, because sure, chasing angelic weapons always works out great. Meanwhile, Luke and Maris are elbow deep in a warlock's vault. They're trying to crack a code that might lead to the sword, but the clock is ticking, and time is not on their side. Elsewhere, Isabelle opens up to Magnus about her past relapses, admitting that her addiction to Yin-Fen is back with a vengeance. And he, stripped of his magic, is feeling more powerless than a Viagra ad. Alec, who should be deep into his angelic James Bond investigation into the Clave's secrets, loses his informant, killed before revealing anything useful. The only clue left behind? A cryptic name, Calestis Ignis. Maris naturally recognizes it immediately, an old, shadowy Clave program known as Heavenly Fire. Clary, feeling Jonathan's pain like he's some kind of emotional appendix, tries to tear the rune out by force. Spoiler, it doesn't work. The pain is hellish, and the bond remains intact, like a demonic platonic marriage with no chance of divorce. Meanwhile, Maya decides she can't lead a pack and maintain a relationship at the same time. She breaks up with Simon, who, though heartbroken, understands. Over at the Hotel d'Amour, Heidi proves once again that manipulation is her craft, convincing the vampire clan that the werewolves are a threat that needs to be wiped out, and they, with the brainpower of a brick, fall for it. As Jordan and the Praetor squad try to contain the fallout, Heidi, missing in action but stirring the pot from afar, feeds the vampire's paranoia. Griffin, now leading the clan, launches an all-out attack on the Jade Wolf with the subtlety of a wrecking ball. But the restaurant assault is just the beginning. The next stage of this chaos centers on the sword everyone's after, and Jonathan, inching ever closer to getting exactly what he wants. Clary and Jace finally get a moment alone. Ice skating, romantic vibes, it almost works. Almost. Jonathan shows up, pulls the classic doppelganger trick, knocks Jace out, and takes his place. Clary grows suspicious and goes full spy mode, alerting Isabelle through the shadows. Meanwhile, Isabelle performs a forbidden autopsy on the Clave guard. With Alec's permission, Magnus, desperate for a magical solution, strikes a deal with Lorenzo, who demands a mysterious price. Clary disables her tracking rune, setting a trap for her little brother. Alec and Magnus travel to Antwerp in search of the sword, only to find the one in the tomb is a fake, and the real one can summon demonic armies. Isabelle rescues Jace, and together they race to stop Jonathan, who's trying to whisk Clary away to his sweet home in Harlem, right atop the ley lines. The apartment, by the way, was the price Magnus paid for the magic. Alec loses it, but Magnus opens up. Without magic, he's not himself. In the end, Jace and Isabelle manage to pull Clary from Jonathan's clutches, but the trauma lingers. Jonathan kissed her, and Clary wants nothing more than to forget it ever happened. Jonathan, on the other hand, is ecstatic. According to him, Clary is almost ready to join him. Magnus is now a guest at the Institute, which makes breakfast with Alec a little awkward. Across town, Luke gets arrested by the police after the Jade Wolf massacre. To protect the Shadowworld, he takes the fall without hesitation, leaving Clary heartbroken. Heidi shows up all sweet, offering information in exchange for amnesty. Cute, right? Not really. She throws Raphael under the bus, claiming he tortured her. Izzy, who'd been keeping that little secret, ends up clashing with Alec. The result? Alec heads to Detroit to handle things personally. Maya, hungry for justice, teams up with Simon to prove Heidi's guilt. Clary, meanwhile, starts feeling the rune pulling her toward Jonathan. She tries to keep it together during a sparring session with Aline, but nearly goes full Edom warrior. When she finally faces her brother on a rooftop, she can't bring herself to turn him in. Deep down, the bond still screams louder than reason. Heidi, quick as ever, silences the only witness with a magical coma. Simon calls in Magnus, who wakes the girl and saves the testimony. But Maya is already on a one-way path. She injects herself with holy water and faces Heidi. When the vampire bites, the sacred turns into poison, and she disintegrates like a true B-movie villain. In Detroit, Alec arrests Raphael after a bittersweet goodbye. Back in New York, Simon can't get behind Maya's methods, even if she walks free at the Downworlder tribunal. In the end, Alec decides to break Institute rules and asks Magnus to move in with him. New apartment and all. On Magnus's side, nothing like a good old morning fainting spell to ruin the peace. He collapses to the floor and starts convulsing. Alec panics and rushes him to the Institute, where Katerina manages to stabilize him. The diagnosis? His body is rejecting Lorenzo's magic like a bad organ transplant, and with every spell, Magnus is one step closer to death. Lorenzo, being the royal jerk he is, refuses to help. Clary, determined as ever, pitches a wild plan. Summon Lilith to find out how to remove the rune. The emergency backup? Recruit Cain. Yes, that Cain, from the Abel story. Meanwhile, Jonathan strikes a deal with the Seelie Queen, the Morning Star sword in exchange for Lilith's head. Simon and Izzy track down Cain and, after some soul-searching talk about guilt and redemption, they convince him to join the team. When Magnus wakes up, he resists the idea of giving up his magic. But Alec, with a speech that would make Shakespeare proud, wins him over. He loves the man, not the powers. Lorenzo finally agrees to strip the magic away. With the team assembled, Lilith is summoned and trapped within the Malachi configuration. Under pressure, she reveals the rune can only be broken by Glorious, the sword made of heavenly fire, but it's already been destroyed. Naturally, Jonathan crashes the party at the worst possible moment, attacks Jace, and brings Clary to her knees with the pain of their bond. Lilith tries to tempt Cain with the classic offer, bring Abel back. He agrees, knocks Simon down, and opens a portal to Edom, dragging them both inside. Clary hesitates for a moment, but Jace's voice pulls her back. Back in prison, Luke gets a surprise visit. Someone from the Praetor Lupus shows up and tells him he's free, his record cleared. Izzy connects the dots. Heavenly fire isn't just a metaphor, it might be the key to cutting the rune. And Alec, done wasting time, asks for the Lightwood family ring, for a moment more than special with Magnus. Meanwhile, Clary confronts Jonathan in his cell. She wants answers about the so-called Morning Star Sword. Jonathan, with his usual mix of villainy and vulnerability, reveals that Lilith, back in Edom, was the one who told him about the existence of a sister, but he didn't see her as a threat. He saw her as salvation. To him, Clary was the last chance to be more than just a demonic aberration. And yes, his obsession with the sword, all to protect the two of them, of course, or so he claims. Elsewhere, Jace and Izzy find out the Clave hasn't been sitting idle. There's a dark initiative called Heavenly Fire, a program that could sever the bond between Clary and Jonathan. The catch? The weapon at the heart of it, the glorious sword, is locked away in a secret Clave prison. And guess who volunteers for the suicide mission? Simon, the eternal nerd now masquerading as the rogue vampire Zeke Russo. Inside the prison, Simon crosses paths with Raphael, now fully human. Turns out, the inmates aren't being killed. They're being cured. Cured using a serum that strips Downworlders of their powers. A forced reset no one asked for. Raphael is one of the first to be purified. And Aldertree's final plan? Contaminate New York's water supply and turn every Downworlder into an ordinary citizen. With help from Raphael and Helen, a prison guard who's had a change of heart, Simon sparks a rebellion from the inside. Meanwhile, Izzy uses her mother's classified access to track down the prison and expose Aldertree. He ends up arrested, but the serum, except for one last vial, is destroyed. Helen gives Simon this final dose as a wild card to save Clary. Armed with the serum, Clary and Jace confront Jonathan. The message is clear. They've found a way to break their bond. Jonathan drops the act. That last glimmer of hope, of being saved by his sister, vanishes. Clary didn't come to rescue him. She came to end him. And while everything falls apart, Alec, ready to get down on one knee with ring in hand, walks into a soap opera-worthy scene. Magnus, drunk and poisoned by his own heartbreak, explodes. He accuses Alec of maybe loving him more as a powerless mundane. The romantic evening crashes and burns, with Magnus storming out the door, and Alec left with a ring in his pocket and a shattered heart. Halloween in New York. While the city gets lost in costumes and masquerades, the underworld does the exact opposite. Masks come off, and everyone reveals who they truly are. Becky, Simon's sister, watches it all from the sidelines. Meanwhile, Alec, pushed to the brink by watching Magnus slowly fall apart, makes a move that's borderline emotional suicide. He seeks out a warlock and summons Asmodeus, the literal father-in-law from hell. And what does the demon offer? A poisoned gift, restoring Magnus's magic and immortality, with one cruel catch. Alec can never see him again. Elsewhere, the miraculous vial of heavenly fire turns into a trial by pain. The attempt to sever Clary's bond with Jonathan nearly kills her. The rune doesn't fade. It digs in deeper. And worse, Clary starts seeing Jonathan as a victim. His influence grows, and soon she begins to defend him. The Seelie Queen sees her opening. She sends an army of Drevik demons as a distraction, allowing a deadly assassin to infiltrate the Institute with one mission: eliminate Jonathan. Maya, on her end, continues to lead her pack with more wisdom than most adults. She asks Jordan to be her beta, and surprise, he says yes. But the Seelie Queen's plan is already in motion. When the assassin reaches the cell, it's Clary. Yes, Clary, who stops her, and it doesn't end there. Under the rune's influence, Clary turns against Jace himself to help Jonathan escape. True to his cursed deal, Alec finds Magnus. What comes out of his mouth are cold, like he ripped out his heart and rehearsed every line. Magnus, devastated, is left alone, or almost. Asmodeus steps out from the shadows, with timing as diabolical as it is perfect, ready to extend his twisted version of fatherly love and finish breaking what's left of his son. Magnus, now a cocktail of rage, pain, and newly restored magic, faces his father. Asmodeus isn't here to negotiate. He's here to shove happiness down his son's throat. The power is forced back into him. According to Asmodeus, it's Magnus's time to shine. Meanwhile, at the Institute, Jace is trying to pick up the pieces. The Clave reactivates the kill order on Clary and Jonathan. Isabelle, the lone light in this dark tunnel, works on perfecting the heavenly fire serum. The goal: inject Jonathan and break this cursed bond once and for all. Clary and Jonathan, reveling in their twisted union, head for the Morning Star Sword. Jace makes a bold move. He sends a message proposing a meeting. Jonathan smells a trap, but the rune in Clary overpowers his doubts. She believes Jace's love might be strong enough to bring Jonathan along, and she convinces her brother to go. Back at the Institute, Isabelle manages to extract the heavenly fire, but it crystallizes into something useless. Simon, always the last-minute idea guy, suggests reaching out to the Iron Sisters. Izzy has another plan: contact a rogue, none other than Luke's sister. Magnus, deluded, tries to recreate a romantic moment with Alec, the lock on the bridge, but the lack of reciprocation turns the gesture into an emotional punch. Alec says nothing, but his silence screams. The magic, like their relationship, is simply gone. Raphael, now a lukewarm ex-vampire, resurfaces. Word of the cure spreads like wildfire, and hope turns to chaos when Isabelle reveals there's only one vial of the serum left. The Downworld community, barely catching its breath, is now gasping in outrage. In the forge, Luke's sister proposes a bolder move: forge a new glorious. Ingredients: crystallized heavenly fire, melted adamus, and angelic blood. With Jace off on his mission, Simon, our second-hand angel, becomes the secret ingredient. In Prague, Jonathan, Clary, and Jace infiltrate the Chandelier of Bones, a Seelie club where Shadowhunters are the decor. Jonathan tricks Jace, who ends up hallucinating. Even in his delusion, Jace manages to warn Alec. Meanwhile, Isabelle and Simon succeed in forging the new glorious sword, but as with any mission steeped in tension, chaos erupts when Jonathan unmasks Jace. Clary, possessed to her core, chooses her brother. Empowered by the rune, she takes Jace down. The Hope team suffers another blow. Jace has lost Clary. Meanwhile, Magnus, drowning in personal tragedy, gets a visit, comforting or manipulative, from Asmodeus. The devil wastes no time. At Magnus's most vulnerable moment, he extends a hand and positions himself as his son's only safe harbor. And so, the pieces begin to fall into place. The new sword is ready. Clary is lost. Magnus is edging closer to hell, and the inevitable clash between brothers, magic, and blood ties looms on the horizon. Far away, Magnus drowns in an emotional pit when none other than Asmodeus himself shows up. Because, of course, when everything falls apart, even your demon dad decides to make an appearance. He treats the new High Warlock like a cat toy, freezes Lorenzo with a snap of his fingers, and hands Magnus his apartment back like he's saying, "Go on, take your little toy." Meanwhile, the Shadowhunters gear up for an offensive. Meliorn conveniently hands over a shortcut to the Seelie realm, and Alec, Jace, and Izzy head out on their mission, fully aware that the glorious sword, crafted with heavenly fire, could blow up in their faces at any moment. At the same time, Alec finally opens up to his mother and reveals the real reason behind his breakup with Magnus, a literal deal with the devil to save the man he loves. Elsewhere, Jordan, on borrowed time thanks to silver poisoning, offers Maya a chance at humanity with a vial of heavenly fire. She refuses, choosing love over normalcy, and naturally watches Jordan die in her arms, because in this universe, suffering is a lifestyle. During the hostage exchange, the Shadowhunters spring their trap. Clary is still on the wrong side, and Jace is forced to fight her. The battle intensifies until Jonathan threatens Simon, finally cracking the twin rune. Clary comes back to herself, but Jonathan levels up in true overpowered fashion, shatters the sword, and races off to Alicante with full-blown villain energy. In the chaos, Izzy gets badly injured by the exploding shards of Glorious, and it's in the midst of this chaos that Magnus feels his magic return. He discovers Alec was planning to propose, and confronts Asmodeus, who of course had manipulated everything from the start. The demon offers him a chance to rule together, but Magnus, with a spark in his eye and magic in his hands once more, sends his father straight to limbo. Maya, now a widow, mourns in silence. Upon arriving in Alicante, they find a nightmare: fallen towers, portals torn open straight into Edom, and a demonic army parading through the streets. Jonathan is fully transformed, and Clary tries to reach what's left of him with words, but the monster no longer hears anyone, and Magnus, knowing the only way to close the portal is from within, says yes to Alec's proposal. One kiss, one promise, and he steps into the portal as a hero to seal the rift and his own fate. Jonathan now looks like a full-on satanic cosplay of a fallen archangel, demonic wings and all. Seelie Queen, ever the opportunist, shows up offering spiritual coaching. He turns her down because drama and self-reliance run in the family. In Edom, Magnus is busy holding the portal open with sheer willpower when Lilith appears again, this time with a wild plan to kill him. He tells her to take a hike. Meanwhile, in New York, Jordan's funeral becomes a turning point for Maya, who decides to reconnect with her roots. But before peace can settle in, Isabelle kisses Simon and literally bursts into flames. Helen Blackthorne delivers the verdict. Izzy's been tainted by shards from the glorious sword and now carries heavenly fire in her veins. Just a spark of affection and everyone's barbecue. Alec considers becoming a vampire and sprinting to Edom, but he's outvoted. Isabelle, more stubborn than ever, asks Meliorn for a secret passage and vanishes. Clary finds out and hatches a bold, borderline suicidal plan. rune. Unite Shadowhunters and Downworlders with an alliance rune. Jace, Alec, and Clary bond with Simon, Lorenzo, and Meliorn, gaining swapped powers. Clary gets vampire speed. Jace loses the ability to lie. Delightful. Alec gains magic. They open the portal and chaos. Total separation. Meanwhile, Luke is captured by the Praetor Lupus and given an indecent proposal. Become a spy. He refuses, reaffirming his vow to protect the Downworld on his own terms. Back in Edom, Seelie Queen guides Jonathan in the fine art of total destruction. The crew reunites, alive, wounded, and fraying at the edges. Lilith's castle looms ahead. The final battle is near. Isabelle, now basically a human torch, prepares to fight, but Alec reminds her, using fire against Lilith could be her end. In Edom, Lilith mocks the Gothic Avengers team as they arrive at the castle, but Clary has an ace up her sleeve, the Alliance rune. With their powers fused, they strike. Meliorn takes a brutal fall, and Lilith shifts to plan B, draining Magnus's life force. She attacks Isabelle, who begins to burn alive from her own heavenly fire. Magnus tries to heal her, but even his magic can't touch the angelic energy. Clary proposes a reckless gamble, channel all their allies into the Alliance rune to siphon the fire from Izzy. And it works. Lilith turns to stardust, and Edom crumbles like hourglass sand. Everyone escapes just in time. Back in New York, Magnus and Alec seal their love with a wedding straight out of a dark fairy tale. But of course, happiness has an expiration date. Jonathan, now fully embracing his tyrannical rise, kills the Seelie Queen. Clary receives a ghostly visit from her mother with a warning. One more rune, and she loses everything. Her powers, her memories, everything. Reports of destruction pour in. Jonathan is attacking institutes across the globe, saving New York for his grand finale. Clary, stubborn and noble, chooses to face him alone. In Toronto, she arrives unarmed. Speaking only of love, Jonathan hesitates, and in that moment, she embraces him and stabs him. He dies as he lived, tragic and confused, whispering that he loves her. With the thread ended, the world breathes again. Alec and Magnus marry. Simon becomes a published author. Isabelle takes command of the Institute. Alec is named the new Inquisitor, and Clary disappears. She leaves behind a letter. She created one final rune. The angels kept their promise. Her memories are gone. 1 year later, Clary lives as an artist, and Jace, still glamored and still in love, watches from afar until she sees him. Jace? She asks. The name, inked on his skin, still holds meaning. The connection hasn't died.